now be available at the end of my content during enrollment season, where after the daily content is finished, you can stick around and learn more about the first year program and see if it's a good fit for you or not. But any questions you have that are not answered, feel free to email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. I would say, and I've said this a few times, it's a really good electional signature for studying astrology right now, because we're going to be doing so as Pluto enters Aquarius again in November. So a really nice election for the study of astrology that's coming through. All right, so here we are on Thursday, September 19th, and let's take a look at the aspect that we have in the sky right now. If I can get my little pen up. Ah, there you are. Okay. Now, here is the sun, late degrees of Virgo, applying to the opposition with Neptune. This kind of completes the journey of the eclipse, because the eclipse contained the application of the sun in an opposition with Neptune. And so anyway, I thought it was interesting this week we had a conversation, myself and Ari Moshe Wolf, about the way in which different forms of astrology are in some ways sort of downloaded from spiritual places. And that's been something that sages, mystics who practice astrology have said for thousands of years. And so we use that as a jumping off point to talk about and Hellenistic astrology. That was an interesting conversation. I felt like it was also appropriate given the application of the sun opposite Neptune. It was a really fun talk. Anyway, so Sun is opposing Neptune today, and if we roll this forward one more day, we'll see that opposition completes tomorrow, and then we're separating and heading into Libra over the weekend for the fall equinox by Sunday. So a very powerful opposition to Neptune, because the lunar eclipse was also conjoined with Neptune while the sun was applying to it. So this is, in a sense, a Sun-Neptune opposition that is charged with the remains of the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse, that just formed. So what I want to talk about today are some of the most common things that I have seen in my practice with clients whenever Neptune transiting Neptune is aspecting the sun in the natal chart. So by this I mean when Neptune opposes your natal sun, when Neptune squares or conjoins your natal sun. And sure, I've even seen some of these things happen with the trine, though the trine has a different kind of, usually you see things that are a little smoother and easier to integrate and deal with. The squares, conjunctions, oppositions, those hard aspects are often a little bit more dramatic and represent more pivotal periods of growth or transformation. So anyhow, but these are some of the stories I can't forget. Some of them are specific, some of them are very general, because I've seen some of these many times. In the case of at least one of these, I've seen it one very memorable time, but it's something that I felt like we could do today in order to get into the heart of this archetypal exchange, using these stories to illustrate what we might experience ourselves in the next couple of days here with this aspect perfecting. So the number one that I have on my list, these are in no particular order, but there's a very particular story that comes to my mind when I had a client who was experiencing a Sun-Neptune opposition in their birth chart. And it coincided with their father, who, and I'm going to get this wrong, I think it was Parkinson's, but it was a degenerative condition where their mental cognition and clarity of mind was gradually dissipating. So almost, I want to say maybe dementia, but I can't remember. But anyway, the sad part about it was that he wasn't particularly old. I think it might have been late 60s, something like that. So it was a little young, in terms of people living to 80 or 90 or something. It was on the younger side. But anyhow, this person's father was fading out, basically. That's the way that I would describe what my client's experience was like. Their consciousness was, the normal linear person was leaving, and there was this foggy kind of lack of clarity mentally. And this was very painful. But what was really interesting was that during these final days or final months or whatever it was, the last period of time before this person's father passed, they were suddenly able to speak to things that they were never able to speak to before. And so, for example, their father was able to apologize and suddenly had this total lucidity, even though they were daily losing this overarching sense of clarity and cognition and sort of linear, grounded, rational capacities were like leaving them. But the dad had this sudden ability in like random bursts, like the clouds were parting, and when some form of normal consciousness would come back, this person's father would be able to open up and be vulnerable and exchange, have some deeply healing exchanges with their kids, including my client. I'll never forget this because I just thought, isn't that just so Neptune opposite your sun? And we had this deep, nice conversation, I think, about Neptune and the sun. But when we look at that, let's break it down archetypally. So if the sun is clarity, Neptune can be like fog, you know? Sometimes that's a really good thing. Think about mystical experiences where your normal sense of what you think to be real or true, it's interrupted. There's fog that comes over it. And then somehow you come into clarity. But the clarity that you come into is like a new world. Think, for example, of Plato's analogy of the cave, or allegory of the cave, excuse me. Plato's allegory of the cave. The prisoner is seeing shadows on a wall in a cave. They're chained to the rocks. And they're seeing the shadows playing out on the wall, and they're thinking that's what's real. And it is a kind of light that they're seeing, but it's actually like a false impression. It's a reflection or a shadow. And then they come out of their chains and they're able to see the fire that's creating the illumination. Oh my gosh. Now I really see what's going on. So one form of perception is traded for another. And then the prisoner goes out of the cave into the light of the sun in the real world outside of the cave, and there's another process of disillusionment that goes on where now we can see the real forms, the real light. Neptune and the sun can be like sea changes in our conscious perception of truth. That suddenly we are in receipt of a much broader and truer understanding of something. And what I like to imagine is that there's no ceiling to how true things can get. It's like we step into a ray of the sun, and we either look at that ray and we go, okay, like I'm in the middle of a ray, or there's actually an image that came from, I think it was C.S. Lewis. I can't remember where this came from. C.S. Lewis was quoting someone else. You walk into like a gardening shed in your backyard, and it's dark, except for there's a hole in the tin roof, and there's a beam of light coming through it. And you could either point at the beam of light and go, oh look, there's a beam of light, or you could step into the beam of light and look up by means of the ray of light through the hole in the roof, and by means of the ray of light you see. So in many ways in our everyday life, we are all in the process, spiritually speaking, intellectually and psychologically, of initially pointing at the ray of light and then eventually learning how to step into it and see by means of it. And this is the process that astrology outlines for us too. We go from looking at events in our lives and seeing them as events and only being able to interpret them in terms of the pleasure or pain they cause us, how desirable or undesirable they are, which is a level of truth. Yes, there is a beam, I'm pointing at it. But then when we use archetypes, we live an astrological lifestyle, we step into the beam and we look up out through the roof by means of the beam, and by means of the experience we see the fingerprints of the divine. This is very Neptune Sun in the sense that Neptune Sun will often be about the interplay between this kind of haze or fog and then illumination or clarity. And this was so wonderfully illustrated in the last days of this person's experience with their father. Father being the sun, Neptune being the cloudy cognition, with sudden moments of amazing lucidity and clarity that was very healing. So think about that as a good story. Stories like that are common, but this one was a specific one that came to my mind. Number two, I have seen many Neptune Sun aspects coincide with people, either clients I'm talking about where we go back in time and look at some important events in their life, or they're in the midst of a Neptune transit with their Sun, and they are realizing they have a problem with a pattern of escapism, codependency, addiction, some inability to see the truth about something that is draining or damaging to their vitality. And suddenly you hit a rock bottom where you see the light. And this is such a Sun-Neptune thing, and it plays on some of the same themes of going from fog to clarity. Many people describe the path of recovery as a path of, how can I put it? They describe it as a path of moving from being in denial or not seeing clearly the pattern to suddenly being illuminated and understanding. So, this is something that I've seen many times. Many Neptune Sun aspects, among other things, sometimes Neptune Venus, Neptune Saturn. There can be lots of aspects that actually bring about similar result, where you come to understand that it's like I think of the first steps of the 12-step programs. I came to realize that my life was unmanageable. It's like there's a higher power and I need its help because I am helpless over this particular pattern or issue. So Neptune Sun will coincide with this sense that I'm out of control, I haven't been seeing something, I've been deluded, I need help from a higher power, I see clearly, and I have to somehow surrender to the issue as being larger than something I can control and something I can no longer delude myself about. And that doesn't necessarily have to be about substance abuse, right? It's just one example. But it's that same sense of I surrender and I'm seeing something clearly that maybe I've been deluded or in denial about. Number 3 is spiritual awakening. This one is so common, and it can happen through anything. It could happen through the rock bottom. It could happen through the healing with your dad. It could happen in any number of situations, but the result often is this feeling of having been illuminated from within. That the Sun Neptune puts us in touch with something transcendental. Psychedelic experiences are common with Sun Neptune. Therapeutic breakthroughs are common with Sun Neptune. Transits like this are brief in the sky. When they affect the natal chart, they obviously have a longer and more drawn out influence. But spiritual awakening, even in small doses over the next couple of days, would not be shocking. Spiritual awakening is not something that has to be like level 10 lightning strike. Spiritual awakening can be just that sense that I'm coming through a fog or a haze, and I'm starting to see the sun again. And the sun, or the stars, guide my vessel. I use them to navigate. They are guiding me home. I don't know where home is. I don't exactly know, who I am. But I know that I'm on a journey, and suddenly I have a re-inspired sense that that is the case. And I've had it before, but somehow I forgot. Just like in Plato's allegory of the cave, the prisoner coming into contact with these things is, in a sense, remembering them. We're an eternal being. The material universe is a reflection of eternity, and so there's this way in which everything we're learning is already there. It's always been there inside of us. It's really trippy when that happens, when you have a sense that something you're learning for the first time has been something you've already always known. But that is such a Sun-Neptune experience, and it's so, there's nothing more creatively satisfying, really, is there, than being in contact with that feeling of timeless, original creativity that is also feeling like It's always been there, and wow, this feels like the first time I've contacted it, and that weirdness. I feel like the same kind of weird perceptual paradox is present when I think about my kids and how it feels like they were born just yesterday, and then how it feels like they've been with me forever. So I know that you guys know what I'm talking about when I speak of this, because it exists in many places. The Sun Neptune will often amplify that conscious sense of things being outside and inside of time simultaneously, which most people describe as creatively inspiring or spiritually awakening. Number 4 is creative success. Actually, there are many examples of Neptune transiting the Sun in a natal chart that will coincide with people coming into the spotlight. Glamour, fame, film, Hollywood. The fact that we are enamored by stars is really the fact that we are enamored by archetypes, because stars are embodiments, especially in Hollywood, where they portray archetypal roles in films that are mythic and themselves archetypal. Our bedazzlement with fame is often really underlying, is really a bedazzlement with archetypes, with the gods, because we sense that life is more imaginal, more fantastical, more miraculous, more mysterious than a lot of our mundane experiences make us feel like. It's easy to reach out for that luminous sense of the divine, eternal, the archetypal through Hollywood or films or through theater, and then by extension through celebrities. But a celebrity is really just sort of, I mean, why? And then what do celebrities struggle with? And I've actually seen this because, a lot of astrologers have at least some celebrity clients and high-profile people over their career. Many celebrities have strong Neptune aspects in their charts and will struggle to differentiate between the collective projections that are placed on them. You're an icon, you're a god, you're an archetype, and being a person. And so it's an interesting thing that happens when Neptune transits the Sun in a natal chart or in the sky, where almost like reflections on the highest potentials or perfection, or our bedazzlement by fame and glamour and success, will cloud the actual substantive yearning, which is for the divine, because the archetypes are thoughts in the mind of the divine. And it's like they're so beautiful, and then when we see them closely approximated in people in the spotlight, we get enamored with the person or the soul. But the soul isn't an archetype. You and I are not archetypes. We're people, which is why you are also not your birth chart. Not good to be too identified with your birth chart. It's think of your birth chart more like a device that you can use for the sake of reflection upon your eternal mysterious soul. Anyhow, creative success is one thing that can come, but also just creative inspiration and a recognition of the archetypal itself that sort of permeates things and can be very uplifting, very enchanting, very magical, a little intoxicating. Number 5, major moments of disillusionment. Here's the other thing that happens with the Sun and Neptune. We often go through periods of time where, as I said to start with, you can suddenly realize that something that you have thought to have been the truth is simply not. And for some of us, that is relieving. That is forgiveness and mercy and compassion. The universe would help us see that some assumption, some judgment, some perception is just not true. I think we're always hard on ourselves in those moments. Think, gosh, I was wrong. Isn't it so much more interesting and beautiful? And don't we become so much more enriched? And don't we become deeper people when instead we say to ourselves, thank you. Thank you, whatever forces there are, whatever exists out there that is helping me see something that I couldn't see, that is beautiful. As long as we insist on thinking that we are in control and that we are in charge of trying to move from error to truth constantly, like if I can just be good enough, and I can just move along hierarchies of truth and understanding to be a masterful person, to be a virtuous person. No, the real gift of life comes when we fail, when we don't understand, and then we can come to be absolutely enchanted by something that is gracious enough to help us understand. to help us learn, to help us grow. And if that isn't deepening our relational and devotional appreciation for the universe and for each other, then we're missing the real gift of the moment, which is not just now you know before you were done, you know? It's like, no, what's even more amazing than going from error to truth is the beautiful personality of the universe that cared enough about you to give you a new understanding. And actually, the real gift is when you're in touch with that, you get a deepened relationship with that reality. And man, once you have that, you know, the gift is humility, the gift is curiosity, the gift is, hey, what else don't I know? Dear universe, please teach me. I don't even know if I know what I need. Dear universe, please enlighten me. And when you start developing a sense that, oh, this universe is a benevolent being that is the seed of being and it's helping me move along, boy, it takes a lot of pressure off from us. So major moments of disillusionment, but be careful of the secret barb of the ego that will start getting proud. Well, now I know. Well, I was stupid before, but wow, I came into the clear understanding of something. And one of the symptoms of sort of self-righteousness and taking credit for moving from error to truth will be that once you're in receipt of truth, you'll start judging people who aren't. Or you'll start using you come through a period of disillusionment and you think that it gives you the right to enact revenge on people who maybe have been a part of, you know, the illusions that we've been stuck in. No. If we really understand how gracious it is to come out of illusion into some moment of truth, then we embody graciousness ourselves. You know, that's how it seems to work best. Okay, well, anyway, 5 patterns that I've noticed with the Sun and Neptune. I hope those are useful for you, that you get some good value out of them, and that maybe you're able to notice some of these qualities just kind of in the air over the next few days. These are big Neptune transits that last a year and a half, 2 years sometimes. We're dealing with a transit that lasts a couple of days, but it is coming off from a big Neptunian lunar eclipse, so pay attention, see what you...
It's another adventure with HiddenIncaTours.com. And today, Easter Island. This is my first book that I wrote about Easter Island, available at Amazon. And so this is part 2 of exploring Easter Island, or Rapa Nui. Little tiny place, only 5 miles by 7 miles by 10 miles, and more than 2,000 miles away from Chile, or the west coast of South America. So the infrastructure is relatively modern, taking into account how far away it is from anything. And we're on one of the paved roads, one of the few paved roads on the island, heading towards the Rano Raraku Quarry. So here we are at the quarry itself. And this is where more than 900 of the moai figures were excavated, or that's where the quarry is. So we're walking around here, and pretty soon you're going to be able to see many of these. There are more than 300, I believe, still in the quarry area. And as you can see, they're basically buried up to their shoulders, or even up to their necks, but each one is a full body. And there's one in the quarry that you will see, unfinished, that would have weighed 180 tons if it had been finished, which it wasn't. And also there are two different varieties of moai. There are ones with flat noses and others like this one with more of a, some would say, European style nose. So it is quite possible that there were two different time periods of their construction. So again, this is the classic view of what most people associate with Easter Island. Again, buried up to their necks unless the heads are broken off, and 950 of them on the island. One of these ones on the right-hand side was excavated by Bill Heyerdahl, and it proved that the moai heads are in fact full bodies. And the one that he excavated, I believe, was more than 20 feet tall. So moving farther along, these are the classic ones with the so-called aquiline nose. And then here we see a much smaller one that is lying down on its front. So I believe that there were two different time periods of construction, that the ones with the aquiline noses, which are the tallest ones, were made first by a pre-Polynesian culture, and then the Polynesians arrived about 1,000 years ago, likely from Tahiti, and they started to copy on a much, much smaller scale. So the mystery is who were the original builders. Again, you see a small one lying down, and then some much larger ones that are buried up to their necks. And that is the quarry in the background. And here again, some detailed views of some of the larger ones. And this one has a ship carved onto its torso. Now, it is quite possible that originally it was carved as a canoe, and then later on the sails were added once European contact was made, sometime in the 1720s. And now we're going to approach one that is still in the quarry, quite massive one. The material is actually volcanic tuff, which is a concentrated volcanic ash that has been compressed over the course of likely hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And this gives you the view of the entire figure that was never finished. Moving farther and farther along, this is on the outskirts of the actual crater itself. The whole thing is the quarry. And now we're approaching a little moai that I believe is the only one ever found in a kneeling position. And in the far distance you'll see Tongoriki, which is a site we're going to get to very soon. So this gives you the landscape from the quarry edge itself, and you see the multiple moai that were never moved to any other place on the island. Almost all of the moai that were moved and placed in position face inland. They do not face the ocean, but there are 7 that will be in another video, which in fact face the ocean, and they are called the 7 navigators. So this is a view of the quarry, and there in the center is the one that would have weighed about 180 tons, but was never completed. And now we're farther along on the outer edge of the quarry, and we're actually going to climb inside of it. So this is my 3rd time to Easter Island, Rapa Nui, and the first time that I was ever able to actually get into the crater itself. Here again you see volcanic stone material, and then volcanic ash or mud, and then there is a small lake in the middle of the quarry area. It's an ancient volcanic crater, of course. And moving along, you'll see that there are totora reeds growing in this little lake. There are actually also totora reeds growing in a much larger lake on the island. And totora reeds are native to this island, as well as the coast of Peru and Lake Titicaca in Peru and Bolivia. And if you look very carefully in the background, you'll see more of the moai, once again buried up to the shoulders or up to the necks. And you're not allowed to get too close to them because there are still excavations going on. But this is the fence from which you can see that there are quite a few of them there still inside the crater. And now this is Tongariki, which is the largest ceremonial platform or ahu on the island. And there are 15 of the moai that have been put back up because the whole ahu altar was hit by a tsunami in the 1960s, I believe. And then these are the so-called hats that belonged on top of the moai. In fact, it's indicative of red hair with a top knot, which is the traditional way that many Polynesians wear their hair. So that's a mystery. Could it possibly mean that the first people who lived on Easter Island or Rapa Nui were actually red-headed people? And so here you see the different shapes and sizes, and there is one of them with its top knot, or hukau, put back into position. And again, another view of the moai that have been put back up again. And now we're going to go around the backside, and look how massive this ahu is. The blank space on the right part of the screen now could mean, according to our guide Alejandro, that there were spaces for possibly 7 more moai to be placed in position at a future time. Now the hill in the background it's called the Poike Ditch, and that is where a fierce battle happened between what were called the long ears and the short ear people. The long ears were the nobility and the short ears were the common folk. And the short ears decided to kill off the nobility, most likely due to a problem with drought at one time prior to the arrival of the first Europeans, theoretically, in the 1720s. And now you see shattered parts of smaller moai, and you see that one on the right side has quite a polished surface. So it is possible that some were made of a harder material than the volcanic tuff, and in fact there is one in the British Museum which is made of very hard basalt, and it's unknown how that material was shaped. If the only tools that the Rapa Nui people had was in fact basalt. How do you shape basalt with basalt? And finally, we're driving by the ocean here, and this is a little recreation of a Polynesian village. This stone structure is actually a chicken house, so the chickens would come in and out of that hole you see on the left. And chickens were very important to the diet of the Rapa Nui people, and were likely brought from Tahiti when they discovered and decided to inhabit the island with their chief called Hotumatua. So here again, a relatively simple construction of volcanic stone, and there's the hole for the chickens to go in, with banana trees as well growing on the inside. This is an ancient earth oven being shown to us by Alejandro, similar to a luau in Hawaii. And then this is a house. Originally, it's believed that the first settlers used their canoe hulls to make a house. But of course, over the course of time, they would have rotted away, and there was limited wood on the island, basically only the milo tree, I believe, or miro tree. And so instead, they're made with smaller tree trunks and, of course, thatched roofing. And then this is a recreation of a garden. I'm not sure if these are gourds or if they're watermelon. They look more like watermelon to me. I don't believe that watermelon is indigenous to Polynesia, but it's just a way to recreate what a gourd garden would look like. And now we get to see the interesting finely shaped stones of the base of the canoe house. And so, once again, this is part 2 of a 5 or 6 part series that I'm doing about my recent trip to Easter Island in October of 2018. And I look forward to sharing more of the interesting aspects and mysteries of Rapa Nui. So these are related books and videos at Amazon.com. My first book, which is Easter Island, Guide for Inquisitive Minds, in ebook and paperback form. This is the one I'm presently working on about lost ancient high technology on Easter Island. And this is a video I did about an hour long on Amazon Prime. And also these are upcoming Hidden Inca tours.
This cave shouldn't exist. In fact, those carvings there almost...
Okay, everybody, here we go. It's me, Gregory Manarino. Thursday, September 19, 2024, pre-market report. People, are you seeing this? Are you freaking seeing what's happening right now? Maybe you're not even aware. This morning, as soon as I became aware of this, I posted this to my newsletter, and I want to read this to you. It's really just too much, honestly. So, Lions, as I am writing this, stock futures are skyrocketing, pointing towards record highs right at the open for stocks. If this continues, it looks like it's going to. Now, let me just show you what's going on here. This is what it looks like across the board as I am doing this. And let me go on. Not only are stock futures taking off across the board, you got gold, silver, crude, commodities higher, cryptocurrencies higher. Now, I wrote this. I want you to pay attention to this part here, all right? Let me see if I can do this. All that has changed is the promise of oceans of easy money from the Fed starting now through 2025. I go on to say, massive currency devaluation and artificially suppressed rates buys a lot of illusion. That's what we're seeing here. The mechanism is just in our freaking face. What have we discussed right here for years? The illusion of the market, people, is a very powerful thing. People are going to wake up, look at their 401k plans, their investment plans, and go, I can't believe how rich I am getting. First of all, this isn't real anyway. You're rich on paper? Absolutely. Looks really good. You know, I'm going to ask my Lions out here for a favor, okay? Those of us, you, me, who have been in this market, buying the dips along the way for years. All right, look. To say the least, we've done very, very well. So if you were like me yesterday and jumped into this market, like I said, hold your fire. Yesterday, on paper at least, you're richer today than you were yesterday. I'm going to ask you all right, to take 1% of whatever profit you made just from yesterday, not even going back, pull it and donate that to a charity that you believe in. You want to know a big secret here? How to be very successful in anything you do in life. You pay it forward. You pay it forward. Being greedy is a pathway to destruction, self-destruction. You pay it forward. For example, take some profit, pull some profit, all right? 1%, that's all I'm asking you to do. And you take that and you donate that profit to a charity that you believe in, something you want to support in your heart that you believe in. It'll come back to you tenfold, my Lions. You gotta live by this philosophy. Pay it forward, pay it forward, pay it forward, and it will come back.
Wandering around the vast Giza Plateau can be a bewildering experience, a seemingly endless layering of detail in every direction you look. The first time you visit, it's only really possible to take in the big landmarks, the pyramids, causeways, the Great Sphinx, and the massive granite and limestone structures that are part of those complexes. Subsequent days, or even weeks spent on the plateau, however, will slowly start to unveil the true depth of mystery present in the ancient stonework. At this point, I've spent the equivalent of a few weeks on the plateau myself, and that's but a tiny fraction of the time my good friend and guide Yusuf Aoun has spent exploring and investigating the plateau, living his whole life as he has basically across the street from the Sphinx. Even with his incredible depth of experience here, we still find new details and observations each time we visit, often with the aid of the fresh eyes and perspectives of those who visit with us. My name is Ben, and this is Uncharted X. And today I want to share with you one of these more subtle details, something observed in recent visits to the Giza Plateau. It's fascinating, and it's a finding that speaks to a broader and much more hotly discussed topic, that of the erosion and the implied age of the stone that makes up these ancient structures. I think there's evidence and reasoning here that only, logically, suggests that some of these structures are far older than their attributed accepted dates of construction, which is somewhere in the 2700 BCE range, the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom of ancient Egypt. As always, watch the video and make up your own mind as we explore yet another aspect of our shared and mysterious past. Our story begins here at the so-called pyramid or mortuary temple of the Middle Pyramid complex. As mentioned in previous videos, and it's a point always worth repeating, there is far more than just a single pyramid when it comes to the whole construction project that erected them. Each of the mighty stone pyramids, those found at Giza as well as at the other Old Kingdom pyramid sites along the Nile, is part of a unified and integrated complex made up of multiple structures. In the case of the Middle Pyramid complex at Giza, which is all attributed to Pharaoh Khafra of the 4th dynasty, the son of Khufu, it includes the pyramid itself, one of the largest in the world at 143 meters tall, or 471 feet, and weighing in somewhere around 6 million tons. Yet, as large as it is, it only represents a portion of the work involved in the entire complex. I've spent plenty of time in previous videos talking about the gigantic task of preparing the ground for this pyramid, which was built into a slope and involved digging the western side of the enclosure down over 30 feet or 10 meters and building up the eastern side with massive limestone foundation tiles, many in the 1 to 200 ton range, and locking them into each other and the bedrock like some sort of giant 3D jigsaw puzzle. Then there is the giant causeway, nearly a kilometre long and very wide, originally cased and covered with a roof, that connects the massive megalithic structures found at either end of it. At the eastern end, the famous Valley Temple with its mostly intact granite casing stones, the adjacent Great Sphinx, and the Sphinx Temple are all part of this complex. Then, at the western end, there's the Pyramid or Mortuary Temple at the top of the causeway, which is larger than both the Sphinx and Valley Temples, but having been extensively pillaged and damaged, lacks nearly all of its original granite casing stones. While the Valley Temple has, or had, 16 huge upright granite pillars, the Pyramid Temple had 24 of them and a much larger footprint. It's here, in the Pyramid Temple, that we recently found what might be the largest single block on the entire Giza Plateau, a roughly 450-ton limestone behemoth, and it was the subject of a recent video. The Pyramid Temple is also the best example of what I'm terming megalithic erosion. The massive stone blocks that make up the internal masonry here show just tremendous levels of erosion. When walking around the remnants of the structure, you often have to look closely to see just where the original surfaces were. These blocks were all, originally, cut and finished with flat faces and square corners. In some places, you can still see where the faces were inset to receive the granite casing stones that covered and interlocked with the limestone core masonry on both the inside and outside of the so-called temple.
And the one on top of it as well
Yeah.
shows that. So the temple was encased in and out with granite stone, which we see the whole everywhere.
At the mortuary temple, there are only a few of these granite casing stones still remaining, the vast majority of them having been quarried and taken from the site. To get an idea of what it might have been like, you only need to take a look at the Valley Temple, at the other end of the causeway, which, due to being at a lower elevation, was deeply buried in sand, thus protected from most of the quarrying, and still has the majority of its remarkable casing stones. On the bare southern wall of the Valley Temple, you can observe the same inset pattern in the limestone core masonry, also present at the Pyramid Temple, that allows the granite casing stones to lock into it. This original granite casing would have served another purpose in terms of erosion. It would have effectively protected the limestone core from the elements and effects like wind or sand erosion, presumably for millennia, which makes the level of damage to the stone that we can see here in the Pyramid Temple even more perplexing. Remember these casing stones, as they're an important part in this story. Before we get into specific examples, it's worth explaining a little bit about the restoration and repair work that's been done here by the Ministry of Antiquities over the last century or so, as it's often mistaken for original work. It's even used to suggest a geopolymer origin for some of these blocks. In this case, the geopolymer label happens to be accurate. Cement is a geopolymer, but it's modern work. This entire structure is quite literally falling down due to the erosional damage, and it's been extensively buttressed and repaired in an effort to slow down or halt this process. In some places, it's quite obvious. You can see here the large blocks cemented into place in areas of deep erosional damage. But in others, it's less obvious, as the bricks and blocks have been plastered over with cement, and then that's been textured and painted to look like the surrounding limestone.
Also, look at this one. This is not the stone itself, but they took pieces of the hole in the stone and they flattened it on top of the surface, because if you look here from the side, you will see that the erosion was this deep. And it goes in the entire stone.
Yeah, and they filled it in. Yeah,
And they filled it in. Same like here.
yeah, it's all repaired.
Yeah. Why the other blocks don't have it? Because it used to have other portion of stone in front. Immediately. Look here, for example, the Ministry of Antiquities filled the erosion with these blocks of stone. So this is a restoration because the erosion is severely reflected on the inside.
Once you notice the repair work, you can see just how extensive it is. Not for nothing, but this is also very common to see on the Old Kingdom pyramids, as well as at many other structures. There's been a lot of work done to shore them up. While it's a good thing that the structures are being preserved and prevented from deteriorating further, it's also creating details that aren't really true to the original form, or in some cases, like that of the basalt pavement to the east of the Great Pyramid, these repairs are forever hiding away details that may reveal more clues about their manufacture and construction. Ultimately, these monuments become something of a facsimile of the original, never really true to it. This process is happening rapidly to the huge statues in places like Karnak and Luxor. The original and lost granite is being replaced by concrete sculpting and paint. Like this statue here that's painted to look like granite. This is something I find somewhat ironic, as the exact same replication and imitation process was going on in pre-dynastic times, when primitive people were painting clay pots to imitate the older and far more remarkable hard stone vases. Today, we're doing the same thing. We're just using cement sculpting and paint to imitate the granite. While I get the need for repairs and support to prevent a wall or a structure from falling, like the work that's been done at the Pyramid Temple, I'm not really a fan of trying to recreate or replicate something that is already in pieces. I'd much prefer that we display the pieces and let our imagination and minds do the work. The great head of one of the statues in front of Luxor Temple was far more interesting when it was on the ground, enabling a close inspection. But if you want to see it today, it's over 30 feet up in the air, crowning a comparatively rough concrete facsimile of the original piece. Although it does make for a nice photo from a distance, and I don't think that most regular tourists are going to notice the differences between the modern concrete and the original flawless granite, I'm not sure it's ultimately a good thing. It's one of the reasons that I was pleased to hear that the proposed project to rebuild the granite casing of the third pyramid at Giza was halted. You know it was never going to look like it originally did, and concrete would have been used extensively. I'm all for mapping out the stones and trying to digitally reconstruct it, but we're never going to get it back together exactly right, so, in my opinion, the details of this structure should be left as they are, authentic. I really do wish they'd have kept on digging that hole though. Clearing off its original base and exposing the bedrock foundation would enable us to learn volumes about this incredible structure. Returning to the Pyramid Temple at Giza and the topic of erosion, a good example of it is this large notch that's been carved across several blocks in the central structure. The full extent of the erosion isn't visible today as it's been repaired with concrete at one end. And in other places in the temple, it seems clear that similar erosive notches in the stone have been filled with blocks and concrete. A great example of the damage this erosion has caused over time can be seen at the front of the structure, where it connects with the long causeway running down in elevation to the Sphinx and Valley Temple, and where there are still just a few of the granite casing stones in place. These casing stones would have, originally, entirely covered the huge front wall and entrance of the temple. The megalithic limestone masonry behind, or rather in between these granite blocks, as the walls here were also cased on the inside, have been so badly eroded that the stack of them has just toppled over, due to nothing more than erosion. These are no small stones that could be easily dislodged, roughly 11 meters long and more than 2 meters wide, yet the accumulated erosive force over time was enough for them to eventually fall. The block that was originally on top of the one that we're examining here today lies in front of it.
And then I noticed that roof. As you can see, the piece of stone here, that used to encase the entire temple.
Yeah.
Just like the Valley Temple down there. And as we mentioned before, that this block here
Fell.
fell. It used to be on top of this one here.
Yeah, and some people think this is like evidence for some sort of ramp, or they were taking blocks here, but this actually fell. It's a stupid idea. Yeah.
According to his YouTube research. But we see the height of the lower block. This is a separate block from that one, and they are separated right here. And we can see the line of erosion. The original width of the block is from
there.
here until here, of course.
Yeah.
And the same for the one that fell.
Yeah.
So as we can see, the deterioration kept eroding, until they could no longer support each other.
And it fell. Yeah.
Just by realizing that, I looked at the rest of the structure, and you can see the entire structure is actually falling apart, not from recycling,
From erosion.
from erosion.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
It is. Well,
It looks really old.
it does seem quite old. Yes,
We,
that's.
of course, need more investigation about this, but it's not hard, because if you compare the other stones that were exposed, and we realized that the difference in stone masonry
Yeah.
down there in the Valley Temple, the same quality of stone is over there, and it was exposed. It was not even under a casing stone of granite.
Another thing I've heard said is that perhaps the structure was built with already eroded blocks, an idea that I really don't think holds much merit. Erosional patterns in the stone are consistent from one block to another, as we've just seen, and this is clearly the result of the same effect over time working on the structure. We can also see the finished nature of some blocks that were protected from erosion by other parts of the structure, and to me it's quite clear that these were all originally cubic or rectangular blocks with flat faces and square corners.
Yeah, the erosion and how it's connecting between the two blocks.
Yeah, it does. It's a strange
The course
erosion.
of stones above and behind, which used to have another course of stone on top of it or in front of it, was not exposed. So we cannot say that the stone was already eroded or something like that.
Right.
The stone eroded, of course, after it was built.
Yeah.
And look at all the filling that was created by the Ministry of Antiquities. The entire temple. No exaggeration. All around. It was not just one softer block that was eroded. This entire section that is filled with smaller blocks of stone and then a layer of coating of cement.
To make it look like old limestone.
Look how eroded. Look at
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. And this isn't, and it's not soft stone either. This is hard.
We all know the toughness of the
Nummulitic limestone.
calcified.
Limestone.
Yes, it's not a soft stone, no. So it's all around, on both sides. If you look at the entire temple, these stones are in that position because of the erosion. So these used to be perfectly cubic, perfectly flat surfaces. And also you can see behind it the reinforcement that the Ministry of Antiquities built to prevent it from falling, which is this reinforcement here, built from smaller blocks and then coated with a layer of cement to make it look like the ancient stone. And the same case is over here. All these parts has reinforcement underneath. Imagine if you look at a temple that it is collapsing literally because of weathering.
Another observation that I've often heard made is that the erosion in places looks like it was caused by water, and not just rainfall but even wave or current action. We'll get into the scientific details of water erosion on limestone a little later in the video, and while I can understand the observation based on the shape of some of this erosion, there are a few issues with the idea. It's certainly possible that at some point, many thousands of years ago, sheet floods or the like might have come across the Giza Plateau, and in fact there's strong evidence for floods at least in the lower parts of the plateau, even some records of them happening during the Old Kingdom. At the bottom of the plateau, the lower end of the causeway, the Valley Temple is thought to have functioned as a harbour during the annual inundation of the Nile. In fact, a new scientific paper came out in May 2024 that suggests these structures were on the original banks of a now extinct branch of the Nile River, named the Aramat branch. Interestingly, this branch only existed when the North African Sahara Desert was a savanna-like environment, with large river systems and lake basins, and ultimately a lot more water, meaning a much wider river with branches like the Aramat being hydrologically possible. This period, where the Sahara Desert was in fact a savanna, stretches back to more than 12,000 years ago, and it ended somewhere between 5,500 and 5,000 years ago, 3,500 to 3,000 BCE roughly, in the late Holocene. This is many centuries before the dating of the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, which is somewhere around 2,700 BCE. So why would the Old Kingdom Egyptians build a harbour here? Nearby to the Valley Temple, the impressive and megalithic Wall of the Crow, which is at a similar elevation, may well have functioned as some sort of water barrier or hydrological control point. Again, it seems strange that we're seeing features here on the plateau that appear to be designed for a water system that simply didn't exist during the established time frame for the Old Kingdom. Although it's possible water reached this level during the annual inundation of the Nile during those times, it would have been far less than the level of the water during the Savannah period, when the Aramat branch of the Nile was some 260 metres wide, or 853 feet. There's something else going on here. Let's also not forget that Zahi Hawass himself dropped a core drill down in front of the Sphinx Temple, which is in this so-called harbour area, He drilled down something like 16 meters or 52 feet, and he hit red granite, which is not a natural part of the limestone plateau, and he reported this in his paper, The Discovery of the Harbours of Khufu and Khafre. This is clearly evidence for something underground, and the remnants of this drilling experiment can still be seen if you take a walk out in front of the Sphinx Temple. So, while individual floods are certainly possible, I have a little more trouble with the idea that large bodies of water might be responsible for the erosion that we see at the other, higher end of the causeway, as it's a different story when we climb up to the level of the pyramids. As mentioned, the plateau has a distinct slope up to the west, and at the top end of the causeway, the level of the pyramids, you're at a significantly higher elevation than the Nile Valley and surrounding desert. Up here, you stand at a height above the head of the Sphinx, and you can look out across the Nile Valley that modern Cairo is built in. Single sheet floods or rainfall events alone are unlikely to have caused the erosion that we can see at the Pyramid Temple, even if they reach this level. Suggesting that there was flowing water running up here for any significant length of time would have meant a truly enormous body of water. Something else, other than single events, must be responsible for the severe erosional features on display, and I think that it's most likely time and natural processes. This brings us to one of the major contradictions to be found on the Giza Plateau, something I've noticed and researched in the last couple of years, and the topic I hinted at in the introduction. That is, that not everything labelled as 4th or 5th dynasty shows this sort of erosional damage. In fact, a lot of the less famous structures on the plateau are, quite frankly, in great shape. Take the Western Cemetery, for example. Located to the west of the Great Pyramid and attributed to Pharaoh Khufu, these 4th dynasty structures are at the exact same elevation as the Pyramid Temple of the Middle Pyramid. They're made from exactly the same type of nummulitic limestone, and just look at the surfaces of these blocks, only a hint of erosive damage. The structures of the Western Cemetery were all supposedly made by essentially the same people as those who made the Pyramid Temple. In fact, going by the Orthodox timeline, this area is supposedly older than the structures on the Middle Pyramid, as Khufu was the father of Khafre. Not only that, but these were never cased in blocks of protective granite, as were the limestone blocks of the Pyramid Temple. So, we're looking at the same stone, at the same elevation level, made by the same people at roughly the same time, all without protective granite casing, yet we only see a bare fraction of the level of damage from erosion. This doesn't make much sense to me, but it only gets more confusing as we expand our search.
So this is here the best example, because we have two in front of each other. The one that reflects a deteriorated surface, it was extracted like that.
So
And
this
it was never flattened.
ah,
So it still has the face of the mountain as they extracted it.
right.
So this is the weathering of the mountain itself.
Oh, I see.
Before they flattened it.
Yeah. Okay.
So all this was removed.
Yeah, I
This
can
is
see
the
that.
part that is not removed. هات يا حبيبي الجاي.
Habibi.
So you see,
So yeah, this is
these ones is the natural surface that they extracted. Now it's flat.
yeah. So they didn't finish this. They were gonna, and they were working on flattening this, and then you have
And you have the flattened one.
yeah.
Yeah, like this one. And this was also
So this is all 4th dynasty, part of the pyramid complex,
of course this is part of the pyramid city.
the pyramid city. Right.
Yeah. So you can see the stone masonry is beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely.
That's why we always say we don't want to underestimate the dynasty.
Right.
It lasted for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But this is finished. When we look at something like that, that is also eroded because it was never finished. It was never flattened.
Yeah, you can see that. So this was flattened here.
Yeah, this one is flat. The rest, this was the erosion of the mountain itself.
When they
Just, yeah, when they extracted. The other ones is the ones that got finished after structure. This was finished in the old kingdom days, and here it is. This
Yeah.
is the same. We're looking at this example because this is the same type of stone that we looked at the interior over there. This is exactly the same because it's coming from the bedrock. And as you can see,
Yeah, it's nicely not eroded. Yeah, yeah.
look how it looks like it is thousands of years old. But the level of erosion
It's not the same.
is not the same. Here we see this erosion. This is the erosion of the rocks itself before they flatten the surface. The other one we know that it was built and it was indented to have
Yeah.
the casing stone of the granite, and then the erosion happened
Yeah.
after the granite stone was built.
Here are some of the limestone structures in the tombs and mastabas to the south of the Great Causeway. Again, we see the same thing. Limestone blocks of Old Kingdom work which were never cased in granite and still in quite good condition. They're lacking severe erosional features. Here's the difference that you might have already noticed. These Old Kingdom structures are, quite obviously, of a different construction style to the more megalithic work. The blocks are much smaller, and the masonry work is still quite linear and fine. The severe erosion is found only on the more megalithic structures, the ones that use huge stone blocks and those that are often cased in granite. At the higher exposed levels of the Valley Temple, we can find similar erosive damage in its limestone blocks. You can see the same thing in the Sphinx Temple, which is stripped of all but a handful of its original granite casing stones. The now exposed south face of the Great Pyramid, viewable after they removed the boat museum, can now be seen up close, and what's left of the casing stones here show severe erosional damage. Several feet of the tough Tura limestone has been eaten away, and extensive modern repairs have been made in this area. Even here, in the core masonry at the northeastern corner of the Great Pyramid, there is a bedrock section that happens to be carved from a natural flint nodule, which is one of the hardest types of rock and used to carve granite and other hard stones. This flint section, part of the natural bedrock, was carved as an integrated piece of the Great Pyramid. It seems to show significant wear and damage, although it is possible some of this damage might have occurred as the result of the quarrying or removal of the casing stones and outer layer. This comparison of the erosive damage that's found between the smaller blocked, less sophisticated structures and the larger megalithic and often far more complex buildings is not just limited to the Giza Plateau. It's a phenomena viewable in plain sight on many of the Old Kingdom pyramid sites in Lower Egypt. At Saqqara, severe erosion is visible on the massive casing stones of the Winis Pyramid. Yet, the Step Pyramid, made from similar limestone but of much smaller blocks, lacks any evidence for significant erosion, and it is, at least in the Orthodox timeline, considered to be much older. This, at least to my mind, presents a significant conundrum to the Orthodox timeline. We have here a case of structures all, according to that timeline, built around the same time period, from the same stone, by the same people, in some cases at exactly the same elevation level, and presumably subject to the same natural erosive forces that occur over millennia. Yet anyone with a pair of eyes attached to a brain can witness the obvious and distinct differences in erosional damage to the larger, more megalithic works, which, in many examples, were also protected from said forces, likely for millennia, by huge blocks of granite. It just doesn't make sense in the context of the established timeline, but it does begin to make sense if we hypothesize that the megalithic structures are in fact considerably older than the smaller block work of the Old Kingdom. I've said many times that the history of construction and even destruction of the sites in ancient Egypt is far longer and more complex than is readily apparent to the eye, and that's certainly true at the Giza Plateau. I think there were many different periods of construction, renovation, repair, spanning thousands of years, and followed by many more centuries, if not millennia, of destruction and quarrying. Who's to say exactly what was here when the ancient Egyptians established their great necropolises of Giza or Saqqara? There is no doubt that they were here. They built on these sites, and they certainly left their mark. Whether or not they truly possessed the capability to build structures like the Pyramid Valley and Sphinx temples made with mind-bending precision and sophistication, as well as single blocks of stone weighing in at over 400 tons, or whether they were even capable of building the pyramids themselves, I'm highly skeptical. Based on the archaeological evidence, what they wrote, the scenes on the walls that they drew, and the tools that we found, there is very little evidence to support it. There are no scenes on any walls showing stone pyramid building, nor of the logistics that are involved with moving 400 plus ton blocks of stone. But we do have scenes of other, more primitive construction activities. Scenes of woodworking, of using sticks, rocks and sand to shape alabaster vessels, and of them making mud bricks, presumably for ramps or perhaps even to make the mud brick pyramids of the Middle Kingdom. The tools that have been found in the archaeological record are primitive. They can't explain the machining and cutting witness marks that are still found on megalithic architecture, nor the precision and sophisticated geometry of blocks and artifacts made from very hard stone. What we can see here is a tale of two industries. One that is relatively primitive, understandable and explainable by the tools we found and the scenes that have been carved on walls by ancient Egyptians, and another that is far more mysterious, sophisticated, complex, precise and megalithic, with no evidence suggesting that the dynastic Egyptians possessed the tools, knowledge or capability to create it. Before we move on to the scientific research into limestone erosion, a quick note to let you know that this video is being brought to you by my amazing supporter community and the value for value model. I want to extend a huge thank you to those who support Uncharted X on Patreon, YouTube channel memberships, Subscribestar and Locals, as well as those who support me directly through PayPal, Venmo or my PO box. I don't do sponsorship deals on this channel, despite daily offers in amongst the endless spam that comes with having a public email address. I also much prefer to operate under the value for value model, and if you get some value from my work, please consider returning some of that value to me, whatever it means to you, in time, talent or treasure. Whether it's the price of a cup of coffee or a monthly subscription, it's all greatly appreciated. My new channel intro is a result of this model, as are many of the graphics in my logos, and I really couldn't continue to deliver this sort of niche content without the support of the wonderful people who choose to support me for a couple of bucks a month. As, let's face it, these types of semi-autistic long deep dives into esoteric topics are never going to be as popular as the shorter, brain-dead reaction content that's so prolific on the platform. I do my best to provide channel benefits to the Uncharted X supporter community with direct communication, early access to new videos, a yearly sticker and merch mail out as a thank you, early access to register for upcoming tours, as well as providing supporter-only resources, photo galleries, as well as Q&As and video content when I can. Again, many thanks to those who support me. I'm forever grateful. And if you're interested in supporting Uncharted X via the value for value model, you can find all the details at unchartedx.com/support. Now, if you're interested in coming to Egypt with me to visit sites like the Giza Plateau and see some of these things for yourself, I will be going back to ancient Kemet in December of 2024, as I'll be joining Yusuf Awen on his annual Primordial Egypt tour. December 4th to 17th, we'll be touring Upper and Lower Egypt, including a 4-night Nile cruise, always a good time, as well as special permission visits to the Sun Temple of Abu Ghurab, the Old Kingdom site of Abu Sir, and a 2-hour private visit inside the Great Pyramid with all chambers open. If you're interested in checking it out, you can take a look at the post on my website or via the link below in the description for the full itinerary, pricing and sign-up details. Back to the video. So, now that we've established the difference between legitimately 4th dynasty structures, the smaller block work, and the more megalithic structures, let's return to the topic of erosion into limestone. Just how long might it have taken for this level of damage to occur in this hard sedimentary rock? We aren't limited to just guesswork here, as there have been quite a number of scientific studies done with the aim of determining erosion rates into limestone under various conditions. I want to acknowledge and thank a good friend and teacher of mine, Randall Carlson, for sharing a lot of this data with me. I have a longer discussion with him on my channel that focuses on the erosion of the Sphinx enclosure, so if you're interested in getting into more details in the way that only Randall can, the link to that discussion is below in the description, but I'm going to cover the main points of these studies here. As a general rule of thumb for our calculations, I'm going to use 2 feet of erosional damage, or 60.96 centimeters, rounded up to 61. There are many places where there is at least 2 feet of erosion damage into the stone. The 11-meter long block wall that's fallen over is one of them. Another are the blocks in the central internal structure of the pyramid temple, as well as those of the temple structure at the third pyramid of Menkaure. Much of the modern repair work was similarly done in places where there's been at least 2 feet of the stone eaten away by erosion. The Sphinx enclosure itself is another example. Given that this was originally a quarry and would have had, when it was quarried, a slightly stepped profile due to the blocks being cut, there has been even more than 2 feet of erosive damage done to these bedrock limestone walls. So, in my opinion here, 2 feet or 61 centimeters is an adequate baseline. Let's look at high energy erosive environments first, as there is plenty of limestone found in rivers or in coastal and intertidal zones around the world that have been studied, like these with the typical notches carved from wave action in Malaysia. The shore rocks of Point Perrin, which is near Perth in Western Australia, were studied by Ernest P. Hodgkin, and his findings reported in a paper titled Rate of Erosion of Intertidal Limestone in the Annals of Geomorphology, published in 1964. The limestone notch that was studied by Hodgkin at Point Perrin actually faces inshore, and it was sheltered from the full impact of the waves, but it's still a high energy erosive environment given the 24/7 nature of water action working on the stone. Stainless steel rods were driven into the rock at 3 levels, and casts were made of the rock surface, including the rods, when they were placed there in August of 1953. Casts were again taken in February of 1956 and once again in January of 1962. The amount of rock lost due to wave and water action was measured by comparing the profiles of the casts. Quoting from Hodgkin's paper, quote, "From these data it is evident that there was progressive erosion over the whole of this nearly vertical rock surface, but that rate differed greatly with level. It was highest at the lowest level and decreased rapidly above this. The highest rods are above high water mark, except sometimes in winter, but must normally be wetted daily by waves and splash. The lowest rods are a little above mean sea level and are covered daily, except occasionally. At this level, the mean rate of erosion was 1 millimeter per year, a figure that again is very close to estimates from limestone shores elsewhere." End quote. So, from Hodgkin's paper, the highest rate of erosion, which was found at the lowest rods, just above mean sea level, that was measured over 11 years, was 1 millimeter per year. Again, this was the fastest measured rate of erosion. The higher rods, still affected by water action, showed far less. If we bust out the trusty Windows calculator, not that we really need it for this, and using our 2 feet of erosion seen at Giza, which is, again, 610 millimeters, at a rate of 1 millimeter per year, that's 610 years of sea level wave action to erode 2 feet of limestone. The problem, obviously, is that it seems, let's just say, unlikely or implausible that the pyramid temple at the top of the causeway at Giza was covered in moving wave action water for more than 600 years at any point across the last 5,000. Hodgkin referenced another study in his paper, one done by Emery in 1941, which was a direct estimate of intertidal erosion based on dated inscriptions carved into the limestone sea cliffs at La Jolla, California. His results came in at roughly 1 foot of erosion across 600 years, which works out to 0.5 millimeters per year. This is half the measured rate of Hodgkin's paper, giving us a figure of roughly 1,200 years of wave action to wear away 2 feet of limestone. This 1,200-year figure matches the results from an Army Corps of Engineers experiment, which was started in 1912, when they constructed a navigation dike by placing large limestone boulders midstream in the Tennessee River at Watts Bar. As reported by Portland P. Fox in the Journal of the Tennessee Academy of Science, Volume 16, published 1941, when the Army Corps constructed the second stage of this cofferdam, enclosing and unwatering the dike some 27 years later, a close examination of the limestone boulders was possible. Here is Randall Carlson discussing the results.
So here, what the bottom line is this. approximately 1/2 inch in 25 years. Okay, so 25 years, this is water flowing continuously. So this is another high energy erosional environment flowing continuously over these blocks. So 25 years, that's going to be 8, so 1/2 inch. If we're going to, move 1/2 inch in 25 years and we've got 2 feet, well, then you've got 48 times 25 or 1,200 years of water continuously flowing over these limestone blocks.
So 1,200 years for 2 feet of limestone erosion in an extremely high energy erosive environment. What about other forms of erosion in more normal environments, not subject to rivers or waves from the sea? Well, we happen to have a lot of limestone that's been conveniently accurately dated when it was carved, in the forms of headstones in cemeteries and other monuments with names and dates carved into the rock surface. Thomas C. Merdling wrote a paper for Volume 6 of the Geomorphology Journal in 1996 titled Inscription Legibility Method for Estimating Rock Weathering Rates. Quoting from his paper, "Many monuments, buildings and rock surfaces have names and dates carved into them, and these inscriptions become less legible in a quantitatively predictable manner as adjacent rock face recedes." End quote. In his paper, Merdling reports that the vertical faces of limestone monuments in Louisville, Kentucky, receded at a rate of 0.5 millimeters per 100 years. This weathering is caused by, well, weather, and to put it into comparison with Egypt, the average annual rainfall for Louisville is 47.6 inches, or 1,209 millimeters per year. In Cairo and on the Giza Plateau, the average annual rainfall is a couple of orders of magnitude less, at 28 millimeters per year, or just over an inch. Using that rate of limestone erosion, 0.5 millimeter per 100 years, or 1 millimeter every 200 years, in an environment with Louisville's average rainfall, 2 feet or 610 millimeters of weathering would take approximately 122,000 years in those conditions. Another study by J.G. Goodchild in the Geological Magazine of October 1890 also studied the rate of limestone tombstone erosion due to weathering and solution in rainfall, and I'll let Randall Carlson deliver the quote from the paper.
This is way back from 1890. The weathering of certain limestones deduced from the observed extent of waste that had affected some dated tombstones. Here we had stones that had been carved out of solid, unweathered limestone at a given date recorded upon the tombstone itself, and side by side with the date was given by the hand of nature a fairly exact record of the amount of limestone that had been carried away in solution from the general surface of each of the tombstones in question. The mean of several observations gave as the rate of solution about 1 inch in 500 years.
At Goodchild's measured rate of 1 inch in 500 years, given that there's 24 inches in 2 feet, that comes out at 12,000 years to erode 2 feet of limestone. And there's even more. F.J. North in 1930 reported on experiments ran by the United States Bureau of Standards to ascertain the solubility of limestone in water in a report titled Limestones, Their Origins, Distribution and Uses. The Bureau placed 2-inch cubes of rock on the roof of their building in Washington, D.C. Quote, "After careful weighing spread over a period of about 7 years, it was found that from exposure to the weather, an oolitic limestone would lose a layer about 1 millimeter in thickness in 100 years. The loss from a compact crystalline limestone was about 1/3 less." End quote. Washington, D.C.'s average annual rainfall clocks in at 41.79 inches per year, or 1,061 millimeters. In this environment, 610 millimeters or 2 feet of limestone would take 61,000 years to disappear. Bear in mind that they also found the harder forms of limestone, which are like those predominantly used in megalithic buildings at Giza, erode at a rate about 1/3 less, which means it would take something like 80,000 years for 2 feet of erosive damage. It is worth mentioning here, as hinted at in this paper, that not all limestones are the same. Even
good to see you,
different
baby.
sedimentary layers in the same rock structure will have different levels of hardness. And this has been extensively documented in the Sphinx enclosure, as well as on the body of the Sphinx itself. The majority of the limestone that makes up the huge megalithic blocks of the pyramid structures and of the pyramids themselves is a very hard form of nummulitic limestone. There is softer limestone that's been used in some other places, something that I think is likely the journal Geomorphology, published 1960.
Although stream floods and sheet floods may be effective agents in the formation of semi-arid landforms, many deserts bear the imprint of even more significant water action. It seems very doubtful whether the required amount of water ever falls in present conditions, which is exactly right. And many authorities have attributed such erosion to a wetter period during the Pleistocene. For example, the valley on the west side of the Nile at Luxor, containing the tombs of the kings, appears to be a water-eroded valley. But the tombs themselves show no signs of destructive water action. This means that water action of any significance probably ceased at least 4,000 years ago.
Looking at the evidence and scientific studies, if rainfall or water had anything to do with the erosive damage found on these ancient megalithic sites, it must follow that they've been there for a very long time indeed, stretching back into periods where they were subject to intense rainfall, into the Pleistocene, and even then they had to be subject to that weathering for many thousands of years, and this is all after the protective granite casing stones had been dislodged. And here we again return to show one of the huge contradictions in plain sight at the monuments of ancient Egypt. If not water or rainfall, then what caused this erosion? It's wind and sand, Ben, I hear the skeptics ranting. Wind and sand. Well, okay, I'm sure wind and sand erosion has something to do with it, but then why don't we see evidence for all this wind and sand erosion on all the other established and uncontroversial 4th dynasty structures that are made with smaller blocks of limestone, ones that were never cased in protective granite? The wonderful works in the Western Cemetery, or the tombs and mastabas found to the south of the causeway, or many of the other examples that are all still in great shape with very little erosion. The fact is, there just isn't any legitimate, logical explanation for what we see at Giza under the established Orthodox timeline. If you insist that the megalithic works of the Pyramid Temple or the other significantly eroded structures like the Sphinx and Valley Temple, even the remaining lower casing of the Great Pyramid itself, are just as old as everything else at Giza, then there are two questions to answer. One, how is the erosion so severe in so short a time in such an arid environment? Today's desert climate in Egypt is basically the same as it was during the time of the dynastic Egyptians. And two, why don't we see similar erosion on the other smaller block structures that are made from the same stone by the same people, found at the same elevation level, exposed to the same weathering as the megalithic structures? You know, the ones that were also cased in protective granite blocks for presumably millennia. This paradox only begins to make sense when you consider the possibility for much longer timelines for the larger megalithic work. Is it possible that these incredible stone creations have been standing here for far longer, and that it was only later, thousands of years later, that the dynastic Egyptians of the Old Kingdom moved into this site and created their great necropolis, buried their dead, and used the location for ceremonial, ritualistic purposes? Beyond the technological evidence for sophisticated tools and logistics in the megalithic work, beyond the massive technological delta between the two construction styles shown in my Tale of Two Industries, beyond the cultural evidence from what the ancients themselves said, Zep Tepi and the 40,000-year-long King's List, and beyond the evidence for true cataclysm with the Younger Dryas, there happens to be some written evidence at Giza that suggests exactly this scenario. In a small underground rock-cut tomb at Giza, which was likely never originally a tomb, there are some Old Kingdom inscriptions that have a very interesting implication.
And this is the name of it. Apex Mer. And the meaning, Mer means the overseer of the German city. And that's another subject.
That is to give evidence that the old kingdom didn't build the pyramid. They built what? The pyramid city.
The pyramid city, which is all what surrounded that structure.
That's what they mean. So they build
Exactly.
surrounding it.
Like in modern times, we have a neighborhood, we call it the gardens of the pyramid. Something similar. Okay, so in 2,000 years later, we cannot claim that who built that neighborhood is the builder of the pyramid. But they just built a town
Around,
or a city
yeah.
as it is written there.
Huh.
And the name of that pyramid, Mennefer, the one on the top, that is the reason that they call it Memphis later.
Yeah.
Right, comes from
Yes,
that's what I want
from
from
Mennefer, then transferred to Memphis.
So they didn't build the pyramid, then they came here and they settled in that location and then they built
the
more.
city.
Not everything from scratch, but they built also more on a much older structure. And it happens that this word right here, Khinti-ish, was that sign of a foreign land, means, this is one word from 4 symbols here, and it means settler. That's what this word means.
Settlers.
Yes.
Not builders, but settlers.
Not settlers.
Yeah.
Yes, and there used to be priesthood responsible for the settlers who was coming northerly from the south and settled in the New Mer or the Pyramid City.
The overseer of the Pyramid City. Interesting. As always, I encourage everyone to dive into the details, evaluate the evidence, and to make up your own mind. Is what I'm saying here 100% right? I'm certainly not claiming that, but I'm trying to follow the evidence to where it leads, with an open mind, and I think that I'm asking some legitimate questions pertaining to the established timeline of civilization, questions that I don't believe have been answered within that context. I hope that the disciplines of archaeology and Egyptology can continue their very slow progress towards becoming a true multidisciplinary field, and embrace new technology, evidence and data, and perhaps even one day eventually loosen their death grip on the idea that civilization itself only ever began once on this planet a mere 6,000 years ago. I think, at this point, that there is such a weight of evidence, both inside the field and coming in from adjacent sciences, that we can begin to civilly and seriously discuss the possibility that our past is both longer and more complex than we ever imagined. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and again, many thanks to my supporter community. I know that it's been a while since I've uploaded, but these videos take a lot of time and effort in research, writing, and production, and I try to keep a high standard. I've been at this one for quite a while, and it's taken a little bit of my soul with it, trust me. I do have a second channel, Uncharted X Live, that features other content and stream highlights if you want to check it out. If you want to help me produce more videos like this one or the others that you can find on my channel, please consider visiting unchartedx.com/support. And I'll catch you all in the next one. tours. Like we did one at the start, one at the end of that 6 weeks. Both tours signed up for another 3, I think, and then we ended up doing 10. 10 total. Unbelievable per tour. Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe it. And Sphinx Temple wasn't on the itinerary, but we went in there.
Yeah.
But so we had permission to get in there, and yeah, so they couldn't find the key, so we we did take an alternative route to getting in there, which
They found a key.
they did. Oh, we did find a key. We found a key to open the door. But yes, yeah, in the shape of a crowbar, I think. But it was
Universal key.
It reminded me
universal
of
key. It was, yeah.
reminded me of the scene from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade where he's in the library.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, the copy.
Stamping the books, and he's like, "Bam!" Right when she stamps the book.
It was a, they're wailing on this thing, and and we're all out there going,
Yeah.
we're all like, in this tank. Anyway, we did get it off there. I remember Yusuf he goes, I have just had a pleasure that few will experience in Egypt.
Yeah.
He was so happy that he got to bust a padlock off.
Yeah, I got to bust the lock.
We were there with
awesome.
the inspector, just to be clear, like we were there with the inspector who should have had the key, and he's like, stuff it, break it, we'll get another padlock, which then we came back and did it again a month later, and there was a new lock on there, and they had the key.
Yeah. He has the guy has a wad of keys, and he's like looking through, and most of them are rusted and unidentifiable, and he's like trying to figure out which one opens this rusted, unidentifiable lock.
Let's move. Raise your arms up to find the key. May he find the key.
And just eventually they broke it off there, and then replaced the lock with a new one, and then we were able to get in easy next time.
But it was funny at the time.
Yeah.
People were like, what are you guys doing over there? Yeah, never mind. Go.
Yeah. It's like 30 people over there.
Tank.
That was really funny. Great groups. Both,
Yes,
man.
both groups were
It
great.
really was. Always is.
Yeah, I just find that alleyway interesting because, of course, they cut the bedrock away, much like the Sphinx. The Sphinx Temple is also cut out of the bedrock, at least the back half of it. And yet the outer wall on, the north side is like 12 feet away from the bedrock cut. Like it's strange that in the back of the temple itself is rock cut. There's the walls are made of
Bedrock.
the bedrock. Yeah. And yet on that side, on the north side, they didn't make rock. They didn't make the wall out of the bedrock technically. I mean, I guess that could have been the outer wall. But it's just strange. It's just an empty hallway that has nothing but that channel block section cut into the ground.
Yep.
Maybe there's more under the ground. I don't know, but it's just so strange. It's like, okay, they cut the bedrock down, then they move 12 feet over and build a wall out of the bedrock blocks that they just cut out of the wall. It's strange. I mean,
it is
so much about that temple is an enigma.
Yeah, you're right. I think what you're pointing out is that the part of the temple that's closest to the Sphinx is the bottom part of it is rock cut.
It's rock cut.
It's cut out of the bedrock.
Yeah. And they left walls standing that are just bedrock.
Yeah. But then this part where they have obviously also cut it out of the bedrock, they nevertheless stacked blocks to make the exterior wall of the temple
12 feet
away from a bedrock wall. This is it is very strange. Yeah.
And spending that much time, or as much time as we have, going around and looking at the engineering aspects of these buildings and sites, it's clear that they had their reasons. They had a plan. They were masters of their craft. So that's the curious thing about it. Why did they do this? Because already that these were genius builders.
Why?
Yeah.
So it's so strange that would be a feature. I don't know. It's just fascinating to me.
Some of the other stuff when we did our between tour walk in Giza, that was fantastic because Kyle and I have spent a lot of time at various large pieces of land where there's many acres and it's rough and rugged, and if you spend some time out there and walk it instead of just driving down the roads, but you actually get out and you walk the land and you go between the different
Wander it.
you wander it. You go between the different landmarks, you walk up and down the canyons, you check out the hilltops, but you do it on foot. You really get a much better feel for the land itself. And so every time we've gone to Giza, it's been in the context of like, we drive up there in the bus, we all get out of the bus, we check some things out, we get back on the bus, and then the bus circles around to another place on the plateau, we get back out and we do so. So this time to go out there, we just went in the main entrance, well, the entrance near Yusuf's shop.
The Sphinx.
And just spent all day walking, you know, with no guides, no one telling us what to do, you know, and well, except for plenty of people try to tell us what to do. we told them to F off.
Yep. You've discovered the secret.
Yeah, there was just so much amazing stuff, like climbing around, and you realize like there is, well, for one thing, just doing, like I was saying, just walking it, I got a much better feel for the size of the place. Like we actually walked between all the pyramids. We checked out all the satellite pyramids. We went to the edges of we went down to Kinkawas, walked through that area. We've been there before, but you know, to walk through this stuff instead of being taken there.
That's a fun area.
But yeah, looking at the satellite pyramids, it's very interesting because both sets, there's two sets of three, one set near the Great Pyramid and the other set near Menkaure. The first thing I notice is that both sets have this similar aspect where there's one that looks very pyramid-like, and then there's a second one, the one in the middle, that looks more like a mastaba, and then the third one is very destroyed. Both sides have this. It's really strange that there's in such similar conditions, you know.
That's interesting. Yeah. Those satellite pyramids are fascinating. There's something that I like your point about walking around. I've done the same thing in the past. I didn't go with you guys that time. I was a tired little boy. Stayed at the hotel that day. And I was like,
I told him,
I'm not going to the pyramids. You guys
I told him, I was like, we're making all the discoveries. He was like, I had a great nap.
I did. Yeah, I had a good nap. I'm like, I seen it. I
discovered 4 hours of sleep while you guys were walking.
Yeah, I have done the same. I'm glad you guys did that because I've done the same thing a few times.
Yeah,
But just for a minute, those satellite pyramids are interesting because I finally Yusuf's, I think, been trying to tell me this for a couple of years, and he was pointing out something that I finally tweaked to on this trip, which is that there is very strong evidence for basically Fourth Dynasty recycling going on in the construction of those.
Yes, I've been saying
of those satellite pyramids. Those things are made, and it's very clear when you see it. They're made from recycled blocks that they got from somewhere else.
Yeah,
and apparently there's no debate that this is all standard model says they're Fourth Dynasty, like queens and daughters or whatever. Well, the daughters. There's a funny story about the Khufu's daughter, right? The daughter story. It's a little. Yeah, we're trying to explain this to some of the girls on tour. What is he saying about this? Well, the story goes that Khufu was broke at the time.
Yeah.
When he was trying to make this pyramid for his daughter. So he decided to rent the daughter out.
Yeah.
And
one stone per suitor.
Yeah, 1 stone per suitor. So she was a busy girl. And that's how we built the pyramid. And Yusuf always then picks up a small rock and goes, how much do I get? What do I get for this stone? Makes a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a hilarious story.
It is a funny story, but... Yeah, it depends on your perspective, I guess.
Is that actual Egyptian myth?
I don't know where it comes from. It's some sort of myth from time. It is a story that comes down from. I don't know where it comes from. I've not really done the research. I can't imagine it's particularly accurate, but that is some sort of rumor, just a dirty rumor.
Yes, right.
Fake news, But those things are very recycled.
Recycled, yeah. That's really cool.
There's quarry marks. Like literally, you see the shapes. They're stones that have finished surfaces, and in fact, they may have come off some other structure.
Yeah.
That then these finished surfaces have got quarry marks on them, where they were basically painting like fix this, like chip this off, like straighten this out and make it into that pyramid casing stone on the outside, because it's that Tura limestone, but it's come from somewhere else. And then you can see where they've done it, and then there's unfinished parts of it, and then there's blocks where they never actually started to touch them, and it's not in that pyramid shape. It's really interesting. I'm like, they would definitely pull in stone from somewhere else to make these things.
But when you go to the satellite pyramids of Menkaure, they have the exact same granite casing stones.
Right.
they look exactly the same as the ones on Menkara. So it's like, the limestone casing from the Great Pyramid or whatever. They've also got Tura on the satellite pyramids, and then the granite casing on Menkara.
Have you
satellites also have?
Did you guys go in there? You guys been in that satellite pyramid at Menkara?
Didn't go inside. No.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
somebody
well
was
made inside.
offering. Somebody was offering to take us in there, but I mean, he was basically trying to tell us there's a statue or something, and we could go in, right?
I don't remember.
But it also seemed at first like he was telling us not to be where we were, and we
I
kept
was
telling
doing my
him-
best to ignore.
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the risk. It's tough to do when you're out there and you don't have an Egyptian with you. You will definitely
Yeah.
get a lot of attention from the vendors and everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. So our general policy is just to try to ignore everybody who's yelling at us. Yeah.
That's the right way to do it. Yeah.
Yep. But this guy had a whistle, so he was trying to be like, he was trying to like act like he was. Yeah, he kept like blowing this whistle at us, and we're like, what? You know, are we doing something wrong or whatever? But then it turned out he wanted to for us to pay for him to take a photo.
Yeah.
And then he wanted to take us into some spot or whatever. We're like, dude, get out of here with your freaking whistle.
Yeah.
You know, stop acting like a freaking lifeguard.
Yeah. Yeah, they do it. I mean, a lot of people pretend to be in some sort of position
Yeah.
of authority, and they're not. It's just they prey on that Western instinct to,
Yeah.
you're not in your own culture. So if someone tells you to do something, you're more likely to pay attention. I think that gets
Right.
leveraged quite heavily to the visitors to the plateau.
Yep. Well, there's more to say on Giza, but let's take a break. Right?
Tons.
All right.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers of the Surfer Podcast. Cheers to you all. So
Yeah.
good to be back.
Cheers.
It was great to be there, but it's also great to be back, and good to be back in the studio doing a podcast. Great to have Ben on, as usual, or a swapcast, however you want to describe it.
Yep. Maybe he will actually publish another podcast after we do this.
What's on your podcast?
Yeah. I do need to make some more podcasts. That's true.
Yeah, I was so excited. A new Uncharted X podcast had come out.
I think I
You
did.
need to invite
2
me on.
months ago.
You need to invite me on. I got hot takes.
Yeah. Russ's turn next. I don't know.
Yeah,
That
it's
was
my
good.
turn.
That was fun.
I need part 2.
We'll definitely do part 2 as well. I think we should do it.
So, the thing that really struck me this time in Egypt was this idea of the primordial mound. I know I talked about it a lot while we were there, but a little window into that idea, I think, was the first time we went with you in 2022,
21.
21, was the Kent Kawas pyramid on the plateau.
Yep.
Now that primordial mound is exposed. Now you can see they've literally shaped the bedrock into this somewhat angular shape, and then they've stacked, there's a bunch of blocks stacked on top of it, but you can see the depressions on the sides where they had kind of fit other blocks to it to make what I would assume would have been a pyramid shape. And so that was kind of a window into this idea of the primordial mound, this natural bedrock that exists that they didn't remove. So then we went to the mountaintop pyramid. I keep forgetting the name of it.
Abu
Rawash. Fascinating. And it's very similar to Kent Kawas, but huge, much bigger. And I kind of see that pyramid as the same thing. Like what we're looking at there is the primordial mound.
Yeah.
That's at the top of this mountain. And you can see how they sort of stair-step cut it. They shaped the bedrock. And the bedrock itself is it's not good. I wouldn't consider it great structural material.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different layers of limestone, some of which are like a really loose conglomerate. Some are highly fractured chert.
Yeah.
It's not very well solidified. It's full of fractures. So you could just see it's just falling out of there. There's some chalk layers, really soft stone, and there's a lot of what's the crystal? The calcite crystals.
Yeah.
And big layers of it too. And you get up there, and the first thing I did when we got there the first time was I just started walking around it slowly and looking at how they literally at the bottom of it, they're fitting granite casing stones up against the bedrock.
Yeah.
So like that bedrock, that was the outside of the pyramid. And of course, as you go up, you can follow the angle. It's truncated, like the bedrock's cut off. It's this huge flat area up there. If you climb up on top of the bedrock, you can walk around this just giant. So they flattened the top of it. And then there's just massive limestone blocks laying around up there that must have been part of the core masonry. So they literally built like a hat. You know what I'm saying? The pyramid it's pyramid shaped, and then it's sort of it's like this hat that fits on this piece of bedrock that they shape.
Well, and there's
also,
a giant hole in the bedrock.
I was going to say, there's a giant big excavation.
Well, that's the thing. The way I look at that now is like, okay, this is how they're preparing for the internal subterranean chamber and possibly upper chambers, and then they've made this huge, like a hallway into the center of this primordial mound.
Yeah.
That is angled down like it would have been the descending passageway, and of course the rock has fallen off the walls, and the ground is all rubble, and so you can imagine, like, I would like to see Kent Kawa's descending passageway again, because I think it was lined with granite.
Yeah.
I think the descending passageway of Kent Kawa's was also cut into the bedrock, but of course they lined it. There's these huge granite blocks laying in there. So, yeah, it just got me thinking, like, this is, you cut this huge pit into the primordial mound, then you cut this long hallway down to the bottom of the pit, then you case all that stuff in stone. You can make your tunnels, you can make ascending passageways in that thing. I mean, you think about it. You can go halfway down that descending passageway and then start a tunnel upwards as you're filling that masonry, and you could have multiple rooms in that place.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I was going to say, I think you're right. I mean, I think that was you go there and it looks like this giant. Some people think, oh, this was an observatory or something. It's because it's so open to the sky. Like you're in this huge, big, wide descending passage, and then there's big space in the bottom. But I think there's plenty of evidence that suggests that's not what it was originally. In that it was probably cased and built, had a roof, and it probably had chambers and structures above it, because it's obvious that the gap at the top was spanned, but you couldn't just span that thing with stone beams and expect to sit a pyramid on top of it. Like the weight of that, you have to build that support up from below. So there's probably smaller chambers, and then it could have been multiple chambers all the way up into the structure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And from a construction standpoint, this is genius, because you think it's a lot of work to cut that huge channel down in there and then cut this giant pit. But if you started from the ground surface, you would have to quarry all the blocks somewhere.
Yeah.
So you'd be cutting way more.
Yeah.
In this fashion, you're utilizing the ground for almost a third of the pyramid's height, perhaps. The bedrock itself, and all you're having to do is cut this channel and this pit, and then you can fill that in with the really nice,
some of those
high
are still in
quality
there.
stone.
There were a few really high quality ones.
High quality blocks laying down on the bottom.
Yeah.
Some fitted up against the wall.
And there's granite too.
Yeah.
Just limestone.
Yeah. So that was really interesting, and it was just, I just really landed it for me, the idea of primordial, because I was, it's this primordial mound. I'm kind of imagining, you see the diagrams of the Great Pyramid, and it's this little mound. It's just like, no. I mean, I would be willing to bet inside the Great Pyramid there could be a
shaped bedrock,
gigantic shape
plug.
Well, yeah. I was going to say that was something I learned too from you guys looking at that, because it's not just the center of these things either. It's these pyramids all have bedrock features too, like we were talking about the Sphinx temple, where it's got walls made from bedrock. I mean, I've talked about it and done videos on the middle pyramid, or Khafra pyramid, having that, there's the southwestern corner, there's like 7 courses of it are carved directly from the bedrock, and it folds in. But it's probably a lesser known fact that not to the same extent, but you also have big bedrock features that serve to lock in the Great Pyramid as well. So it's not just this primordial man in the center. There's these bedrock blocks in it around the corners, and you guys have pointed out, I think, what was that corner?
That was the thing that blew my mind.
Corner?
The northeast corner of the Great Pyramid. That was the part that blew my mind. I was like, it's flint. It's literally like
a massive flint nodule.
Humongous flint nodule, and it's got this natural, like, weird winding cave that goes in there. I think in the more I observed it, it looks like it may have been a massive fossil bed, like just a huge collection of maybe all these different shells. There's like the big spiral ones.
Yep.
That are in there, and I know some of those are out in the limestone bedrock as well, but it looks like it possibly was some kind of big, maybe a coral feature full of all these shells or whatever, and it just, I mean, it's flint.
Yeah,
But it's like knobbed, got all these knobs and weird shapes in it.
but shaped into, you know, basically that stepped course shape of the pyramid, and also not ever intended to be exposed to the outside, because the casing stones are all gone, and then, like, you know, you've got another 4 or 5 or 6 feet of stones that are outside of this, but they actually, this is so much more effort to, like, lock that structure in or something. Like, it's a and you see it, there's other blocks around there too that are bedrock, like individual blocks that are like, okay, this is like a key that then this serves to kind of lock that structure. I mean, not like it's going anywhere, but they I don't know, man. I wonder why they did this. Like, what, I mean, is it not easier to, from a planning and logistics perspective, just to, like, all right, we're going to cut this thing flat, or at least we're just going to level off, and we're just going to plan this with blocks? But no, we're going to shape these particular areas on each side of it that are just going to be from bedrock that just are still attached to the ground. Then we can build the structure around them.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing when, I'm sorry, but when people say, like, oh, you know, they flattened the bedrock and the whole thing is like flat to within, you know, a quarter of an inch or whatever over all this space, and it's like, well, no, actually
they didn't.
They just cut, like, if you think of that northeast corner, there's like, we're going to make this cut here out of the bedrock, and then we're going to fit a stone to case it, and that stone where it sits is going to be within a quarter inch flat of the whole thing. It's it's nuts.
And you can see that. I just love the idea of the foreman out there, and he's looking at the architect, and he's like, why are we leaving this thing of flint? And the guy's like, so it doesn't move.
He's like, well, it's 6 million tons.
Move?
This is the other thing that comes up to me.
Who's going to steal it?
The Sphinx Temple drove this home too. That they have to be cutting the bedrock at the same time that they're casing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I came to this conclusion from really just like obsessing over these two hallways in the Sphinx Temple, and I'm just like, there's no way the bedrock cutting guy can come in here and just decide to leave these random angles sticking out of what otherwise would have been a straight hallway, just leave like a big chunk sticking out of the wall. He can't make those decisions without the stones casing it being there, ready, being prepped, and being put in as it's being cut.
Yeah, I mean, there's bedrock nubs in that place. Like, they literally do this in the floor, in like a smaller version of what the pyramid is, but it's sticking up out of the floor. Like,
if you think of an architect designing it on paper, he doesn't know what's under the bedrock.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
So the architect designs it, then the limestone cutting crew comes in. They would just cut it to match the design. But no, that's not what was happening. Somebody was cutting as the building was being built at the same time. It's like, so that's what I was going back to, this chunk in the corner of the Great Pyramid.
But, well, you know, like, we can go a little speculative here and say maybe they did know what was in the limestone before they cut it out.
No, like this, yeah. They just were like, yeah, this one spot, leave that nub.
Yeah,
1 foot or
there's a
diameter.
There's a dense collection of flint right here. We're gonna leave this as part of the corner. It's 6 meters down.
Yeah, that I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like these big nub protrusions on the floor of the. I mean, come on. They're the same as the rest of the limestone. It's like somebody's making that decision because they have the tile.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we'll cut a hole in this tile because it's already got this crack or whatever.
It makes it so much more. I mean, everything's, you can already tell from the shape and size of the stones that it's all pretty custom, right? It's not like exactly like you're pumping bricks out and making it, but that's it speaks volumes to the planning and design that had to go into this, and maybe a bit of the ability for them to I don't want to say that they do it on the fly, because I don't think you can do this stuff on the fly, but it feels like they're they know, they just have these options on what direction to go. I mean, there must be a requirement for this. Like that's the other part. Like there has to be a specification from whoever wants this thing to say, because this isn't the easiest way to do it. I mean, none of this is the easiest way to do it, but this is even an even more ridiculously difficult way to do it, right? There has to be a reason for it, is one of the other things. It's like, why? Why wouldn't you at the Sphinx Temple just make that flat bedrock and stick your floor tiles down? That's got to be easier than leaving an odd assortment of bedrock nubs that poke up that now you have to modify all your floor tiles and design everything around it to make sure it fits. And
not just nubs, but bedrock pits. You're filling the pits.
Yeah, I think that I do think that there's a lot of stuff being done on the fly, but I think the geometrical design is in the mind of the builders, right? Like you set the geometrical design. This is the geometry, and this is the level of precision. Obviously the design can be very precise, and then the builders are, even though they're making decisions on the fly using the natural medium that they're working in, they're always working to that geometrical design specification. That's kind of the way I think about it. And then of course there's these tolerances, which is what we've talked about in the unfinished presentation, which is like you've got all this excess material. You're just trying to make sure that it surpasses the lowest tolerance of,
and then you remove material.
Yeah. So as long as it follows that, you're good to go.
You come back and smooth it all out later.
Come back and flatten the casing stones on the inside of the Sphinx Temple after it's done.
Yeah.
And then in some cases, like you were pointing out in the King's Chamber, that was not what they did.
Yeah.
They cut everything beforehand and stacked it precisely.
Yeah.
There's no blocks going around corners.
King's Chamber's a bit different, isn't it? It's just like perfectly well made. And designed and plopped down.
It's the outsides of the King's Chamber that are flattened and softened in place. Like the above parts, where you can see it in the pictures of the relieving chambers. They were scooping material out, removing material there, and then above that, it's flattened probably previously, and then above that, there's more scoops and stuff.
Yeah.
So I wonder what the King's Chamber looks like on the outside of the blocks.
That would, I think you're right. Probably be rough. Man, I'd love to get into that Cavilia's chamber because you might actually be able to see
I think we've seen roughly what it looks like, and that would be in the southern shaft and at the bottom of in the bottom of the
step pyramid.
The step pyramid.
Yeah, that's what the outside of the King's Chamber looks like.
And those both, like, again, like the southern shaft, I'm just like, this is pyramid prep, like right here. I mean, it's a shaft, and then they just didn't have the angle. Actually, they may have. I have some video of it. Looks like it was,
well, the southern shaft, people won't know what that is. Like that's another. I mean, that was also a first for me on this trip, getting in there. I've been wanting to get in there for some time because this is like almost like a sister structure to what's beneath the step pyramid. It's another giant. It's like a replica almost. It's the same damn thing. It's another giant shaft. Like if you think about what's beneath the step pyramid, you've got like an 80, 90 foot deep shaft that's 45 feet wide or wherever it is, and at the bottom you've got a 32 piece granite box. That's like a built chamber, more or less. And then in the southern shaft you have a giant shaft. It's outside the pyramid. It's outside the courtyard of the pyramid. It's a giant shaft. It's 8,900 feet deep. It's 45 feet wide, and at the bottom of that you've got a 32 piece granite box. It's basically an enclosure, or a chamber. I mean, it's how many bloody burials does Jose need? It's just up there with Sneferu and all his pyramids. It's like there's another shaft just like it out near Winisa's pyramid.
Yeah. So doesn't this kind of remind you of the test passages near the Great Pyramid?
You tested it all. Like, the way building a whole box.
I have to freaking see.
I know they did a box. You're right. I mean, but it's like there is a similar thing to this, right? There's a place where there's like a model of the stuff in the Great Pyramid, or at least parts of it.
I feel like it's all that there's something to this design. Like I've said this before, but when you go into the King's Chamber, you just happen to go inside the box. Like everybody's like, oh, I want to get in the box in the King's Chamber. You're already in the box.
You're in the box.
You're in the big one.
You're in the big box. Yeah, that's right.
It's because when you go to other ones, it's like you get down there or what up there or wherever you're going to this chamber, and there's a box. There's this granite box.
Yeah.
The Great Pyramid, and I guess there's maybe is there another granite chamber you go into in another pyramid? I can't
Many of
remember.
them. Yeah, I mean the third pyramid, Kara pyramid, Lahoon pyramid,
All right,
they're all granite boxes. They're all
You
granite
go
pyramids.
inside. I mean, just the one that you walk into it.
Yeah.
Right. This
Yeah.
granite room.
Yeah.
So it's like those. I feel like the step pyramid and the southern shaft are weird because you actually come to the outside
Of the granite box.
It's like
Yeah.
you know, we tunnel should actually go in.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not supposed to be out in this.
Outside around it. Yeah. Yeah.
This is not supposed to be seen.
It feels to me
Yeah.
like it's not.
We were cased.
Yeah. And well, there's a whole other that other shaft that's near Winisa's pyramid that you look down in. That's the same depth, same size. Oh, I mean, we don't know how deep it is because it's not very, but it looks like there's a giant box down there as well. Like you see the lid of something down there. And it just to me, I feel like at that whole area, and I go, well, this is the old stuff, right? And then they just decided, well, we'll build a pyramid over this one over here, because maybe there's other tunnels and other things going off from that one. We don't know if there's other pyramids or sorry, other tunnels and things going off from the other shafts, but there's miles of tunnels beneath Saqqara. But just the fact it's a carbon copy of what's beneath the step pyramid is just insane. Like,
Yeah, and the question is which one is the copy?
well, yeah, I just think they're both. Yeah, I mean, my brain goes to like, well, these are
These are
functional.
old.
They're older. They were doing something, and then later on, it's like because I firmly am in the camp of like, yeah, the step pyramid probably was the first pyramid that dynastic Egyptians made. I think
Yeah.
they made it. It's a tremendous effort, like 400,000 tons or something, and it's done
You
with
know what
smaller stones. You can look at it and see it, but I think it was. Yeah, I'm completely on board with that, but I think they built it over the top of a pre-existing hole in the ground.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking of about this, like how there's a small version or whatever, and then next to it there's a larger version, and then it kind of reminded me of the of like what we do with particle accelerators. They're all connected to each other. Like I
Spin
it's
one.
like go look at particle accelerators, but you build you
go there.
You have a small one. When you look at the history, even of CERN, it's the same way. When they start up the particle accelerators, the smallest, oldest one starts first.
Yeah.
They turn that one on, and it begins the acceleration, right? And they run that one for a while until it gets to its max energy level, and then it's got a tangent that goes to the next big one that they built 20 years after they built this first one, and then it circles on that one for months until it gets, and then bam, it gets shunted over to the biggest one, to the Large Hadron Collider, and then it circles in that one for a couple of months until it gets to the full. But they are all connected, and they start with the small one, and that's what it reminds me of. Like, you got this one hole, and it's got a little box, and they're like, wow, this is kind of cool, but it's not quite giving us what we need, so let's build another hole with a little slightly bigger box,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is actually working out well. Let's build another one with an even bigger box. And this box will be big enough where you can walk around in it.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the King's Chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. I like that analogy. That's apt.
Yeah, it's like there is. That's why I was. That's why I was saying. It's like not a copy, but is there a development?
Well, that thing blew up at some point, so let's hope that doesn't. Hopefully, the analogy doesn't carry over to the Large Hadron Collider, because aren't they planning to try and make a black hole when the eclipse happens or something? Like
They're gonna turn it on and make a black hole. Yeah.
during the eclipse. Sounds like a good plan.
Well, it takes like months to get it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So they won't be making.
We don't know if they've been running it for months or not.
It takes them 6 months to cool it down.
They've
To
known
even turn it on. Yeah.
They've known about the eclipse for a long time.
They have. Yeah, they could be cooling it down already as we speak. Yeah. But yeah, they have to cool those magnets for a long time before it starts to work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this is all. So what else did we see walking around Giza? We noticed that some of the huge blocks at the base of the Great Pyramid are pretty much, there's just stacks of fossils with sand, but it's been lithified.
Mm-hmm.
We saw this stuff when we were out in the Fayum. The drivers actually stopped, and we all got out, and we're just standing on this sandy area that was like you could just you run your hands through the material, and it's nothing but shells and sand fossils from like what were they, Eocene,
Yeah.
30 to 40 million year old, seabed. And there are blocks in the Great Pyramid that are basically made of compacted lithified versions of this stuff that we were picking up.
Fossiliferous.
Yeah, extreme. Like all it is fossils. Not a good building material. Not at all. But they made blocks out of it.
Core masonry.
Yeah. It's core masonry. Yeah. And you can see all around the area, around the pyramid, there are sections of the bedrock that are also that stuff. It's just nothing but fossils, but it's all been glued together, basically lithified. And I found that to be really interesting. Like they're clearly pulling material from all around the area. You can look up at the pyramid. If you stand there and just look at it for a while, you see there's all this different. It's not just they say, well, the core limestone masonry. Well, some of it was probably taken from those massive limestone quarries that Yusuf took us to last time we were there. These gigantic holes.
In Cairo, like across the river.
Yeah, across the river there are these enormous. They're not like normal quarries where you're digging down. Somebody dug into the cliff walls.
Yeah, they were following layers.
Layers and leaving these gigantic caverns.
There's another thing I noticed. Speaking of layers, like in the tunnel under the Great Pyramid. Under the Step Pyramid. They basically tunnel down through all this crappy limestone, and then they hit this, like 8 foot thick, really solid layer of good Tura, and that's where all the tunnels just they go up.
Let's dig the tunnels in the hard stuff.
They dug a shaft all the way down, and then they hit that hard layer, and they're like, that's the roof.
Yeah.
For the tunnels. The tunnels just go everywhere underneath that hard layer.
Yeah.
And that's where they set the box. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like they're masters of this stone. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And like you can see it in the Osiris shaft as well. When you get down to the first room, they're following this particular layer of stone when they're cutting that big room.
Yeah.
Then they go down again, and then they hit another hard layer, and then they cut a big room under. Because it's like it's a solid roof for you wouldn't want to dig a big open area
in the crappy materials. Yeah.
So they just go down until they hit that hard layer, and then it's like tunnels on. Let's go.
Yeah.
Did you guys know
that was?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you notice when you walked around the Great Pyramid? Did you notice because now on I think it's the southern side where the boat museum used to be, now it's gone, and you can actually see all the casing stones. Did you notice that some areas it's just the erosion on some of those casing stones at the bottom? I mean, it looks severe. Like I am going to be doing a video about erosion, the mortuary temple at the Middle Pyramid complex, and compared to the other Fourth Dynasty structures. But I look at some of the erosion on some of the existing casing stones still on the Great Pyramid. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Looks pretty severe in places. Other places not so much, but some of those casing stones are pretty heavily eroded.
They also have been plastering them. This was pissing us off that day. Remember we saw all those casing stones where somebody has come along and tried to repair them to fix the erosion?
Yeah, in modern times, right?
So they've like plastered it to give it this,
put mortar all
they
in
put
it.
mortar and it filled the holes, and it just looks like crap.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's probably why they stopped Waziri. Like that was the other thing I was looking forward to seeing when we just before the tour, right? Waziri had dug that hole at the third pyramid at Menkaure.
Yeah.
And was talking about rebuilding it, and I was like, okay, clearing the base and documenting it, good. Rebuilding it, bad, because I know how you guys are going to rebuild it.
He got fired.
Mo told me, man.
Yeah.
Mo, literally, that when we got there and we figured out, he got pulled up, and they're like, there's a committee they stopped his work, and there's a committee that's headed by Zahi Hawass that's going to figure out what they're going to do about it. And Mo told me at the start of that tour, he said he's going to get fired. I was like, really? He was like, yeah, he's gone. And a month later, sure enough, fired.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Head of the Antiquities Department fired over saying some shit on Facebook about me. Digging a hole. You dug a hole in the wrong spot, son. And they filled that shit in. Like, it was really annoying.
Filled the hole in.
Yeah, we turned up and I'm like, damn it. And you see all this fresh dirt there. I really wanted to.
Yep.
Because if you guys haven't seen that, go out and find it. You can look at like the excavations at Menkaure Pyramid. I think the video's on Facebook, but they dug down. I mean, where the entrance is, it's another 2.5 courses of stone beneath the ground.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's a flat granite platform there too.
Well, that's what
like on the side.
Yeah, I'm super interested in the bedrock there. Like, what's the bedrock preparation? Because you look at the other pyramids, there's these giant foundation tiles beneath them.
Yeah.
Oh, there
Huge
could
amount
be a
of
whole
bedrock.
basalt floor and all that stuff under
Yeah.
there too.
Yeah, who knows? It blows my mind that we've never cleared the bases of some of these monuments. Like, these are I don't know if you get any more famous than the pyramids of Giza, you know?
Yeah.
But we just have never cleared the base of the Menkaure pyramid. We've never cleared the base of the Red Pyramid. I mean, the Bent Pyramid's still got rubble around it. More or less, I think they've exposed the corner points, at least on that one. But, you know, the Red Pyramid, the Menkaure Pyramid, you can't see the base of it. Like,
Yeah. The casing stones just go down into the sand, and that's it.
I would say one other thing about the erosion on the casing stones, it's very clear when you look at all the different structures on the plateau. The stones at the bottom are extremely eroded, like laterally. They've got all these deep fissures in them laterally, and I'm definitely on the wind and sand erosion for in that camp. Like, this makes perfect sense. You can see like there'd be these little eddies, of sand just grinding away at that stone on the bottom. So of course it makes sense that the builders would put, or at least they don't have to be the pyramid builders. They could be repairers or whatever, but put granite on the first two courses.
Yeah.
No, the
You know what
pyramid
You're gonna put you put granite on the first two courses of the pyramid, because that's gonna hold up the most to that sand that's gonna be in that first 10 feet of the pyramid base. And then once you get up higher, you can move to a slightly softer stone like Tura, and you're not going to deal with nearly as much erosion there.
Yeah.
So it's
it's
I wonder if they did it'd be interesting if they did a site study, and they were like, well, where the Great Pyramid is, it's not going to have such a big problem. The Middle Pyramid, it's going to have a problem at the base. We'll put 1 or 2 courses of granite, and then Menkaure, it's gonna have a lot of wind-blown sand coming off that hill towards it.
Yeah.
So it needs 17 or 18 cases of granite.
maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous. It's a lot of granite.
Yeah. There's a lot of work.
I that middle pyramid, man. Because there's that one spot on the north side where there's a granite block that's in the superstructure that's up at like 8-9 courses high. Did you guys see that? So as you walk
On the Middle Pyramid?
Yeah, in the Middle Pyramid. Yeah, there's a like to the left. If you're looking at the entrances to the left, up high, there's a couple granite blocks that are in there. Like there's something else there. I don't think that's an indication that it was cased that high, but there's some feature that was made from granite up there. And it's to the left of the entrance, not the main entrance. It's not like if there ever was really an entrance to it there, because the main entrance you go in through is through the bedrock out the front.
Yeah.
And then I just got to looking at the pictures of the pyramid and from all these different angles, and I just keep noticing that at some point, it's the first 5 or 6 courses. It like the quality of that pyramid shifts. Like it's the bottom 5 or 6 courses, maybe more, 7 or something like this. But you can see a noticeable shift in quality, and it's just like, I don't know if it almost looks like 2 different periods of building to me. Was this like a platform at some point? Maybe it was encased in granite up to that point, and there was something on top of it.
a step pyramid.
It could have been something, and then later on it was built into a true pyramid encased with the Tura limestone. I don't know, but there's this huge
It
difference.
doesn't surprise me at all.
It wouldn't, because you go and look at the higher levels of the core masonry of that thing, and it's quite poor. Like it's a noticeably lower quality of core masonry than what the Great Pyramid is. But the bottom courses are way better. Like there's megalithic blocks in there that are a couple 100 tons, or 150 tons or so, in those bottom courses. But that's not the case the higher up you go. It just shifts. There's a dramatic and obvious shift in like architecture. So. I don't know. It's worth more investigation, but I keep looking at it and going, this is like this thing is something else. Like I'm not sure it was always a pyramid.
Yeah. Well, that made me think of the satellite pyramids.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I kind of got that idea about all of them.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, there's one that looks pyramidy, and then the middle one looks a lot more like a like a step pyramid or a ziggurat.
Right.
Like a tall ziggurat, right? It's got a big, nice base platform, and in the whole middle of the pyramid has a very vertical aspect to it.
Like what's the one
Like
we
a
go
tower
to?
with a very slight, yeah,
My
Baidu.
Doom.
Yeah.
That central structure. I mean, come on, they built that first.
Oh, 100%. And then the
It was
case
pyramided.
came later. Yeah, it was pyramided.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I could give Khufu credit for turning the Great Pyramid into a pyramid
Yeah.
because it was something else first.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Some other structure that may have been highly degraded, like starting to fall apart. And he's like,
Yeah.
This is why maybe some of these kings did this for multiple sites. If they weren't burial sites, maybe they did want themselves buried in them at some point. But like, why would you build multiple?
Yeah, like Snefru and his
Only
3
need
of
one
them.
for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they? Did they decide to start making these structures to protect these much older original structures, these core structures, whatever they were? Which is what, this goes back to the whole primordial mound thing. It's like something was going on.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. If these old kingdom kings were, they were not like Ramses.
Right. They were closer,
and they're
much more connected to.
Yeah. So they honored these structures. They repaired them. They cased them over to keep them from falling apart more than they have. But they didn't claim them by writing their names all over them. Right.
And
But some of the stones may have mason marks that say, "Yeah, we're the gang of Khufu."
Right.
You know?
Or, yeah. Even then, I'm not that particular glyph I've got issues with, but
Yeah,
there are
that
amazing
particular
amounts of
one.
other ones. And to be fair, there is they found one of the exterior blocks at the Red Pyramid supposedly has Snefru's name on it. Similar thing, supposedly. But yeah, I mean, but that whole concept of revering and protecting and preserving almost that older architecture, that's not unique to that area. I mean, this is a super common theme you see in South America and Peru. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's you can see the obviously much older layers of architecture that are then built on and protected and almost lovingly kind of encompassed by the later megalithic builders, and then the Inca would kind of do the same thing. The Inca came along and, all right, well, we're also going to put our touches on this and build on top of it and encircle it. It was almost there's this concept of this encircling and protection, circular protection of the older work. So it's interesting.
And there's even and in Egypt there's even later versions of that where they were mud bricking encasing all that stuff in a mud brick wall.
Yeah. I love this too because you've got the superstructure. Obviously, it's sticking out of the mud brick. You can see these megalithic limestone blocks, whatever they are, just corners of them or whatever sticking out. They use this method of making these mud bricks. It's like, yeah, it's fine because they're going to put a roof on it. They're going to put this Tura limestone roof over the mud brick, and it's going to preserve it. It's going to preserve that inner structure. And even though the limestone was quarried away, the mud brick is melting away. Like you're still only seeing like a little corner.
Yeah.
It's whatever is in there is still protected thousands of years later. So the mud brick, I think, it doesn't. It's not necessarily like a lack of the ability because they still may have cased it and finally worked that casing stone.
Yeah. Right.
They could have built the casing stone to high degrees of accuracy.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, this core masonry can be whatever, and it's like depends on economics.
There could be giant mud brick pockets in Giza pyramid. We just don't know.
Yeah, we don't know if that's true.
Like the entirety of the middle pyramid is basically unknown.
That's what
it is.
Scan Pyramids Project on the mud brick section.
Yeah, pocket.
Damn it!
Did Muons move differently through mud brick? I'm not sure.
I knew the throne of Khufu was going to be in there. But no.
All right, another break. Yeah.
We'll be right back.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers of the Servant Podcast, joined by Ben from Uncharted X. We have half our pyramids tied behind our backs just to make it square. We've been talking about Giza. We did so many things on this trip. I mean, 6 weeks. We did a lot of stuff. But one of the things we wanted to get to is our explorations in the Fayum in between the tours. So we had like 10 days, something like that, in between. So the first 3 or 4 we spent in Cairo, right next to the plateau, and that's when Kyle and I went on our walkabout on Giza and found many things. We took a bunch of videos there. We'll be publishing those soon. But then we went out to the Fayum and did some trekking around in the desert. And the first day, the first day in the desert, we went out and went to, what was the place called?
Qasr el Saga.
Yeah. So there is a what looks like an old kingdom style. It looks like similar to the Valley Temple, much smaller, but similar to the Valley Temple in construction. Was that sandstone?
Was it limestone or I don't know if it was sandstone. It might have been limestone. Could be one of the two.
Yeah. But similar in style of construction, just out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it really is.
Out in the desert. It's just now, if you look at the historical records and read some of the published work on it, they suggest that this used to sit near where the flooding would come to. So there's this large, sort of flat area, and it would make a big lake during flooding seasons where the flooding was.
Well, it still is a lake there.
The Fayum itself is like this. It's this huge basin. And it kind of, if you're looking at a map of the Nile, it looks like almost like a grape leaf branching off of the Nile.
Yeah.
That's the way I always think of it when I see it on a map, and you can tell because it's green. So it's an oasis.
Big depression, yeah. It
huge depression that the Nile flooding would sort of branch off the Nile and fill this whole valley. And it's quite beautiful down there. But then on the ridges around it, that's kind of where we went.
Yeah.
Driving out into the mountains.
Yeah. It just changes from green to desert.
You climb up these mountains and you're just in the high desert, and down below you can see there's lakes down there. It's a beautiful area. But yeah, that's the basic geography.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an ancient landscape. I mean, it's there's full of fossils and this is where it's similar area to, the western deserts where the Valley of the Whales are.
Yeah.
You have 30-40 million year old skeletons poking up out of the sands, and you can just tell this is an ancient place. And then you drive around these hills, go around the top of the lake there. I don't know if it's Lake Morris, it's one of the other lakes I think, and then all of a sudden you just find yourself at this massive structure that's sitting out in the middle of the desert, and it's very similar to the Valley Temple, like megalithic, polygonal masonry. You've got chambers behind the walls. It has bull-nosed chapels. It has all these similar features. It's got architecture like the Valley Temple. It's got bull noses and curvatures and cornice blocks like both Old Kingdom and the boxes on Elephantine Island. There's flint everywhere around the place. It's even as we walked out and went around in the surrounding neighborhood, there's clearly evidence for occupation. Like there's tunnels and burials and stuff everywhere out there. So it's
prehistoric occupation.
Prehistoric occupation.
Yeah. Pottery lying all over the place.
Yeah. Really interesting little spot. I hadn't heard much about it, but I was super happy we got out there because I went out there last year. I went out there when I was there with Yusuf and Mo for a few days, and so I've been wanting to get you guys out there, and we took a few people out there, and this was one of those things you can go and see. There's a ton of these sites that are kind of off the beaten track you can go out and take a look at, and this was, I don't know what to make of it. Excuse me. It's super interesting though. It just doesn't fit the story. There's even around it, there seems to be evidence for like an older structure that's been destroyed. Like there's blocks that are super heavily eroded, but they're clearly cut blocks. That are laying around outside it. So maybe this is only a portion of what was here originally, or it's a rebuilding of what was here originally. I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of. In that, just thinking of it in those terms, that it might have been a piece of something rebuilt. That makes a little bit more sense. Just that thing by itself.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can understand the urge to say this is a shrine, or this is a temple.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. It's so weird. Like, what function could it possibly have? Again, no writing. It's not covered in hieroglyphs.
No.
Yeah.
So that was
There were statues in it. There was, I think, there's a remnant
Yeah.
of a statue, like a calcite statue.
Yeah, there's
in one
there's
of the-
7 alcoves when you go inside. So it just made me think of a shrine, like
Yep.
this is some shrine, but
But
again,
they also connect it to the removal of basalt from
that's what I'm saying. It's on the road to a quarry,
yeah.
and
A
the road
road, yeah.
itself
Yeah.
is another thing entirely. I mean, we're driving along, and I'm like, what is this? Old railroad track?
Yeah. World's
Looking out
oldest
the
road.
window, I'm like, that's. We're driving past all this stuff. I'm like, that's petrified wood.
It's petrified wood.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a corduroy road made out of petrified wood.
Corduroy
Yes.
road made from petrified wood and basalt. And
Yeah.
basalt. So there's literally this is describing to people. You're out in the desert. This is the Western Desert, and you're just shooting out in these dunes, and it's this crazy desert landscape. And then for a portion of this, we're driving towards these mountains in the distance, and you just notice that you're right next to this. I mean, it's fairly narrow. What is it, like 3-4 meters maybe?
Like a railroad track.
Like a railroad track. Yeah, like the berm. It's
4
wide.
cubits.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, 4 cubits, right? Royal
2 horse
cubit or
flat.
is it the
It's
royal
2
cubit?
horses.
African cubit, royal cubit. Yeah, but it's straight as an arrow too. It runs straight from, and it goes directly to what turns out is the basalt quarry, which is I've always wanted to get to because I've talked about it in videos. I said I know they say there's a quarry out in the Western Desert at the far edge of the Fayum region, out in the desert. And this road apparently runs straight back to the lake, and it goes for miles. And I think it is acknowledged as one of the world's oldest roads, like 4,000 or 5,000 year old road. And it's, who knows how old it is? It's tough to date the stone, but it's they made the damn thing from petrified wood and basalt from the quarry, and it's just full. And then there's nearby is like a petrified forest that we went and took a walk through too, where you see the remnants of whole trees and skeletons and fossils from ancient whales and crocodiles and things like this. But really interesting why they did that. And then you keep driving and following it, and we got to kind of the mountains, and it's all these mountains that are covered in basalt, and you just see these just basalt boulders and rubble everywhere, and you gotta keep climbing up them and walking up them through these little valleys and stuff, and then you're faced with these series of these tall hills, and they're still quarrying basalt from it. I mean, we could hear across on the other side of the mountains they were, they're hammering away and pulling basalt out of there. But this is also an ancient quarry, where at the very top layer, it's like all this crumbling basalt. None of it looks to be big enough pieces that you'd think could be used for some of the sizes of the basalt blocks we've seen on sites. Like at Abu Sir, you've got giant big basalt blocks. You've got statues made from basalt that are really large. There's other slabs of basalt, and you're looking around, and you're like, none of this seems to fit that bill. But if you look right at the top of the hill, the crest of the hill, the top, 7 or 8 meters, it's solid basalt, and apparently that's where they were quarrying a lot of this basalt from. We didn't quite get up there because it's sketchy, and it's quite a climb. But it's one of these days we will, I think.
Yeah, we're gonna have to climb up there. We didn't know for sure when we were out there if we were in the right place. Yeah. But later we were looking at some of the maps and the papers, and that we're pretty close to the right spot. And if they're correct, then up at the top there were like 4 different areas where they've marked as ancient quarries.
Yeah, and supposedly there's saw cuts and stuff up there too, like the same sort of stuff you see on the other blocks.
Exactly. That was what we wanted to get out there to see. Like, are there the same cut marks, witness marks, and stuff in these quarries as what we see on site?
I was just trying to imagine that road. Like, they literally took this, like, oh, there's a log laying over there.
Yeah.
It's basically stone.
Go find some more.
I mean, they just laid them all down one after the other. You try to imagine driving on a road made of logs, but these are stone logs, and they're narrow, and it's just, I don't know. And then underneath the stone logs was some kind of calcite or some other limestone material they were using. It's like, I don't know, just trying to imagine, okay, we're gonna climb up this mountain cut this huge basalt block off of it. Then you're gonna drag it down this road made of
Petrified wood.
petrified trees. I just
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, we don't know what that finished surface of that road might have looked like, whether this is still part of its foundation or not. I mean, if there was something on top of that, it's all gone.
I mean, surely they could have flattened it just like they flattened granite.
Yeah.
So it might have been nice. It was just amazing to see that they actually used, the logs as though they were logs and laid them down one after the other.
Yeah.
You could see the round ends sticking out with the wood grain in it
Yeah.
on the side of the road.
Tree
Just-
rings and shit. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, and then we found the petrified forest and went for a walk through that, and then I think we also hit the Valley of the Whales when we were out there. But the Foam's such an interesting place, and then there was quite a bit of dooning, as you were saying. We did some dooning.
We did.
This is all in four-wheel drives, so we did spend a few hours playing in the dunes with the boys, driving us around and having all the kids and children and women screaming.
You get on the peak of this dune like this, it's like way up there, and it's just this corner, and the Jeeps are driving on that corner. You're looking down, it's like, oh my God, that is so. And then you see, we're in the back, my Jeep with my family in it. Laura and the kids, they're in the back. I'm in the passenger seat, and you see the Jeeps in the front just go off the edge, and they start drifting down the side, and Laura starts screaming. As soon as she sees it, she's like, no. Away we go. We go down the edge too. And, oh my God, it was epic.
And you get a sand
And
bath.
hilarious. Yeah,
The window's halfway down, and it comes off the tire and just washes you.
Yep.
It's like,
Yeah, there's no AC. So you're like, you start getting hot, so we roll the windows down, and then the wind picks up and just Ben and I get coated in sand. Yeah.
We're in the silent Jeep. We just sat there stoically.
It was hilarious. I knew
Totally
it.
done plenty of this. Yep.
I knew it. They were in front of us, and Laura and the kids are just screaming their heads off every time we do something crazy. And then at some point we're driving along, and I just tell Laura, I'm like, I bet that Jeep up there is completely quiet. Sure enough, we get to the stop point. The Egyptian guys were awesome. We stop at this really cool place where there's an overhang. There's this big protrusion of bedrock, and we're in the sand, and there's this big overhang in the shade. And they just lay out all these carpets and start grilling and set up tables and pillows and everything, and just serve this beautiful, amazing lunch under this overhang of this cliff. It was quite something. And then they busted out some instruments, started jamming for. It was so cool, just being way out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it was cool.
Anyway, I confirmed it was true. I went over there and I was like, "How was the ride, you guys?" Oh, it was great. That's quiet. Oh yeah, we could hear y'all screaming.
Yeah, I literally could hear you guys screaming from our Jeep.
Yeah.
We could hear the screams.
Yeah. Yeah, we were, the only noise in our Jeep was us laughing because we could hear y'all's Jeep. We start laughing. It was hilarious.
Our driver, like, whenever he would, like, a lot of times you're trying to climb some dune and just didn't get enough power or whatever. And there was a couple of vehicles that had to stop and back down, and we're following pretty close behind one of them.
Yeah, he was cursing out our guy, right?
Multiple times, our driver would start yelling in Arabic. I'm sure he was cursing the guy in front of us, and I would just copy whatever he was saying. Blah, 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 blah. I started, and he would laugh.
Because you guys were following us, and sometimes our driver was a little slow.
He was a little slow.
Your driver would have to back up and try it again.
Change direction.
Come out over here.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys know the desert. That's an amazing thing about it. They just go out and they just kind of know what direction they're going and where to head and where they're. I mean, they've been doing it for decades probably, and then. But you just feel like you're literally out in the desert. You can't see anything. It's just desert, and we're just hauling ass through the desert. It is an experience. Yeah, Egypt's got a lot to offer. It's an incredibly rich country in terms of just different experiences and different places that you can go and do. It's really interesting. People don't think about those aspects. And then you got the Red Sea, which is beautiful. You wouldn't these beaches and coral and some of the nicest water you'll ever see.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We went from like getting doused with sand, like coursing on dunes in jeeps, and 3 days later we're 70 feet down in beautiful, clear, crystal clear water, looking at coral and fish.
Yep. Yeah,
Toilets.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a shipwreck with some toilets.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I got a great picture of you. Well, I mean,
I just turn around and look down there all the way at the bottom, and Russ is sitting on this ancient toilet. He's just like straddling this toilet, just looking around. Like,
Yeah.
Somebody take my picture. Yeah. Blowing bubbles. That's good.
great comedic moment. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking at that photo the other day. It was funny.
Ben, afterwards we were sharing photos, and then he sends us a picture from like 10 years ago where he was sitting on a toilet.
Yeah. I have a picture of doing the exact same. When you see a toilet underwater, you go sit on it. That's what you do. Yeah. I sat on a toilet just like that. That's what I was laughing about. Underwater, I think I was laughing.
Yeah.
I saw you sitting on it. I'm like, you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Ben is a fish, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you guys know this, but I turn around and he's doing flips.
You did amazing. No. I mean, for you, I was so impressed with your dive. Honestly, like, you were worrying about Laura. Laura came with us too on the dives. You were driving this super complicated iPhone supercase dive computer thing, taking pictures, and you had no problem managing your own dive. And this is kind of was your guys' first real dive, like real ocean, proper dive out, and you just handled it like it was nothing. That was super impressive.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
I did have some ear problems.
Oh, we all did.
Trying to.
Just the congestion from Egypt.
We all had some congestion and some. We were questioning whether we were even going to be able. Ben and I were just like, well, let's do a shore dive the first time, and like we'll get down and see can we even equalize. Yeah.
Because for me, I mean, I hadn't been diving in more than 10 years, so.
Yeah.
But I did awful lot of it back in the day, and I love the water. I'm comfortable. I mean, I think the most important thing is as long as you're comfortable and you don't panic and you can handle yourself in the water. As long as you remember the fundamentals of diving, you click right back into it, which is what happened. I was fine, but I was a bit worried because I'm like, diving while you're congested, you got sinus problems is never a great idea. But it was fine.
Yeah, you were funny too, though. You get down there, there'd be some fish or whatever. You had your GoPro.
Like get right in its face.
He just like the fish.
Yeah, that's right.
Whatever it was.
Yeah.
He's got this little thing. He's poking stuff.
Yep.
He's got a little
my little rod.
rod. He's poking shit with it.
Yep. Yeah, I did. I saw the footage of you and those little fish were biting your fingers. You started to play with those bottom feeding fish, and then you had to snap your hand away because they started like, oh, we're gonna eat your fingers now. And you're like,
yeah. They definitely took some bites out of me. Yep.
That was great.
Yeah, it was fun. But so then we came back and did it all again for the second tour, and it was just as epic. It's what was interesting actually. One of the aspects of doing two tours, and we started off by talking about some of the new work that's happening on some of these sites. Abu Sir's been cleared out. Even Abu Ghurab nearby has, they've exposed some structure in the sand out the back of that. Yeah. One thing I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but and this was like, I wonder how often this sort of thing happens. Because the first time we went to Abu Sir, or Abu Ghurab, which is the Sun Temple, the obelisk base. There was an archaeologist that worked there, and they had excavated out the front of the courtyard, the big area in front of this obelisk base, and the Hotep, and they cleared it all out, and they've exposed the bedrock. And there was some mud brick stuff, and there was all these features. They dug it right down to the bedrock, and he's walking around barefoot. We're all hanging around waiting for them to leave so we can do our thing. Yeah. And he's taken all these pictures of it and stuff. We see him documenting it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I know they've been working on that site for the last couple of years. But then we came back a month later, and it's all buried again. They buried it back again. They literally took it up, they dug it up, they documented it, and then they reburied it. Which, in principle, I'm fine with, but it's just like, where does that data go? I'd love to know, is this going to be in a paper, or is it just something that happens in academia, or does it come out 10 years later? I mean,
that's the weird thing about
we just never know what gets done, and
We don't know what's in the archives. I mean, they've
No.
got who knows what.
Well,
That goes back to your point too about like a lot of this stuff was published, you know, like Petrie stuff he was publishing, but there's so much. Like, did anyone ever excavate these shafts on the Giza Plateau? It's like,
No one knows.
where's that data?
I've tried. I mean, doing the same thing in the pyramid, right? Obviously, when we went into the Great Pyramid, and we went in. We do a special permission. We end the tours with this awesome 2 hours inside the Great Pyramid. Go into all the chambers, blah blah blah. And you know, there's the first time we went in there is not as much stuff, and the second time we go in there, I mean, for starters, the Queen's Chamber is just full, like a workshop in there. There's like a drop saw, a miter saw. They're doing woodworking. They got there's cables going everywhere, and then. You know, the first time we saw it, there was obviously an electricity cable going up into the chambers above the King's Chamber, the relieving chambers. So the access to that's at the top left corner of the Grand Gallery, 18, 20 feet up in the air, and there's a cable going in there. And then the second time we go in there, there's actually the ladder for it is strapped to the railing. And I asked him, can we get this ladder out and get up in there? He's like, no, you can't do that. I'm like, God damn it. What are you doing up there? There's a cable. I know I'm sure they're drilling for this new void is what I suspect's going on, but who knows?
Yeah. The thing that's really funny to me about that ladder is like in Chris Dunn's book, The Giza Power Plant, when he goes through the history of discovery, and I think it's Davidson or somebody, it's like, there's this tunnel up in the top of the Grand Gallery. We got to get up there. And they tie 2 ladders together with rope. And me and Russ were laughing. We're like, dude, you're at the top of the Grand Gallery. It's so sketchy. Yeah. You're gonna tie 2 ladders together and to get up in this hole.
Guess
and
what they
when we
do?
get there, they have 2 ladders tied together with rope. Like, I know what that is for. Exactly. Still the same methods.
And it's just strapped to the railing that's in there that helps people walk up and down the Grand Gallery. I'm like, God damn it, can we just untie this and prop it up and go and see?
No.
But, so
there's a power cable going up there. They're doing something.
Yep.
Yeah, that thing's been run up there for a year or so. I mean, they've definitely been in there. I mean, they closed that pyramid, as I've told people, like last year in the summer for 3 months. I mean, so they, I had heard various things about, obviously they found that first chamber, the new chamber that's beneath the chevrons at the main entrance, and somebody told me that they knocked a hole in that. And I mean, they drilled, they put an endoscope in there and took a look, and then somebody told me that they cut a hole in it to actually go in there. Although Russ, you and I did actually manage to get up there on this last trip and take a good look at it. Big tube drills up there, as a matter of
In the
fact.
dark.
In the
to
dark.
be fair.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. So it's so
Told
stupid.
us not to use lights. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't go up there these days.
Yeah.
You used to be able to. Like, there's literally a built like the way you get into the regular pyramid and just the main entrance now, the Mamun's Hole.
Mamun's Hole.
They built a staircase, and it's like you can just walk up there. There's also an existing kind of staircase that they built. Up to the main entrance, but there's a gate and they won't let anyone up there now. But back in like 2016, you could just go up there. Like, you could just walk up there and take a look.
Yeah.
But at some point they're like, now this is all off limits. You can't do it anymore. But of course, we're there for 2 hours. It's night time because we're doing our private entry, and we just, hey, can we go up there? And like, okay, make it quick, no lights, because otherwise the cops out on the plateau get all excited when they see lights, up the pyramid. Like somebody's trying to climb the pyramid. And I really wanted to get up there because I knew there was, and I'd seen it before, there's a big granite block with these massive tube drills. Really
all the way through, like deep,
long tube drills that have really, really clear striation. One split, like the typical quarrying where they've cut it split along the axis of the tube drill, but then 2 more behind it that are full of sand and shit, but they're obviously there. And it's part of some mechanism that must have been up on that main entrance. But yeah, it's just, there's all these little hidden features on that thing, and they're doing stuff. I mean, we didn't see any holes to get into that other chamber, but like I said, they closed the pyramid for 3 months, and God only knows what they were doing in there. I mean, cleaning. But I suspect, I just wish there was a bit more transparency about what is actually happening, because I know, I'm sure some of those guys that are working on it feel like they own it. It's their information. It's their their monument, but it's like there's a lot of interested people that want to know what's happening in there, and there's certainly a long history of things happening in there that nobody knows about.
Right, and then like you've said, and Yusuf says, like the ministry controls the release of whatever is discovered. So
No, you take Gantenbrink, for example. I mean,
Yeah.
he wrote that whole report on all the stuff that he found. They canned it for so long.
Yep.
He eventually just releases the information on his website.
yeah,
Louis de Cordier did the same
never
thing.
released
yeah,
Yeah, with the labyrinth. I mean, they canned his
Yep.
report
Yeah.
on the labyrinth too,
And
and then
reports
whatever,
published on the website.
5 or 6 years later, he publishes it and goes stuff it. I'm gonna try
Yep.
and put the data out there, but who knows how much stuff's happened? I mean, I've dug into it a bit in the past. There's acoustic engineer reports of stuff that happened during the Shore expedition in the late 90s, where they were trying to do acoustic experiments in the pyramid. It's that in itself is a not well understood series of experiments that happened, but they also report during that time having problems setting up their experiments at night time because they're hammering away and drilling and excavating up in the relieving chambers, and they're seeing guys coming out there with burlap sacks full of limestone chips. I mean,
yeah.
what are you doing?
What the hell? Yeah,
This is the 90s. Who knows?
yeah, yeah. Who knows what they've been doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the last time we were there in 2022, the robbers' tunnel in the alcove in the Queen's Chamber was open, sort of.
Right.
We went in
sort
there.
of.
Yeah.
Wasn't
This
locked.
time it was completely sealed off and locked, and I guess that is the place where the Scan Pyramids guys put their. At least that's what I've read. That's where they put their actual the active plates, right? Because you can put it in there, you can lock it away. It's not going to be disturbed by any tourists,
Yeah.
even if they're coming in and out of the Queen's Chamber. So we couldn't get in there this time. But the Queen's Chamber, half of the chamber was sealed off. You couldn't get to the back half of the chamber.
Yeah, I mean, literally half.
From the shaft entrances, the two little shaft entrances, from there to the back half of the chamber was completely filled with equipment and materials and boards and
Put
it
up
was
tape.
sealed off.
Caution
Yeah.
tape.
Caution tape. Yeah.
And same thing in the descending passage, right? All the way up. Normally you can turn left and go up to the top
Up
of the
to the top,
descending
yeah.
passage, and
It's
now
full
it's
of
full of
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
There's lots going on. I mean, I know they closed the middle pyramid for, I think they'd run and scan. I mean, I don't know if they're doing that or not.
Scan pyramid stuff.
Scan pyramid stuff, although I think they're also doing it in the third pyramid. There was,
Yep. On the
there's
outside.
definitely stuff happening there.
Yeah, they had on the what is it, the east wall where the other
east
flat,
side.
the other
military-
flat
the temple
is.
structure.
They had built a scaffold there. They were running GPR up against that flattened surface, right across that prism block.
Yeah.
He had a little GPR unit, and it's
Wafting
He's-
it back and forth.
going back and forth on the scaffold, pointing it into that wall.
I wonder if they've done some Scan Pyramid stuff down inside, and they have seen something near that
Well,
face.
remember we went in there, right? And when you go into the bottom of that, there's that one right at the bottom. There's a right-hand turn, and there's a gate that leads down to another chamber. And we walked past there, and there were some irritated-looking Japanese men locked behind that gate.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
Scan Pyramids team. Like that
Yeah.
is 100% Scan Pyramids guys. Yeah, they're like, God, these fucking tourists, like they're just,
Like tourists, yeah.
they're probably like this stream of people all day coming past. I'm like, what are you doing in there? Like, just go away.
Yeah.
You're busy. Stop breathing our air, kind of thing.
You're making it hot in here.
You're making it hot in here. Yeah. I mean, it's cool they opened that pyramid up again. It was closed since. I mean, it's been closed for 6, 7 years. Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was the first time I've been down in there, and it is you go down into the bedrock, but there's
granite
blocks. Yeah, and there's a granite room.
Granite box.
Yeah, that doesn't it have the curved ceiling? I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember.
Yeah, it has the
Curved
curved ceiling, same as Lahoon. So Lahoon
Yes.
is also the big, the granite room with a curved ceiling.
Yep.
And there was another box in there, but it's now, it was what was the name of the ship? The Deirdre or something? It sunk. Vice tried to take it back on the ship.
Diving opportunity.
Yeah.
Diving it, seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people have been trying to find that thing.
Oh, no one's found it.
No one knows where it is. No, they. So it was a ship when I mean it's fully laden. I have the bill of. I got it from Matt at Ancient Architects. He's kind of he thinks he's going to go. He wants to go and try and find it. I'm like, go nuts. But,
Nice.
But he's been tracking it down. Like he found the bill of lading, like the insurance for it, and it lists like 100 plus artifacts. One of them is the box from that third pyramid that came out of Egypt, and the damn thing sunk in the Med somewhere. So. That box is currently sitting along with a bunch of other probably really cool shit on the bottom of the Med somewhere.
Currently.
Yeah, currently, who knows, right? I mean, down there with all the other obelisks that sank and everything else that went down. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, isn't there some gold ship that I saw something in the news recently about some salvage where they were trying to find this, like, apparently literally billions of dollars worth of, in modern era worth of gold.
Yeah.
Some treasure ship that came out of Spain or South America or something. Just hoarding all the gold, and like it sank. Like you fuckers were too greedy.
Yep. Too much gold.
Too much gold. Sunk it.
Yeah.
There's plenty of gold. I mean, who knows? I mean, that always astounds me when you talk about the gold coffin of some of these places. I mean, obviously it's a decorative metal, but they had access to a ton of it because, I mean, it's literally like what 100 plus kilograms of gold in one of these sarcophagus.
Yeah.
One of these masks, the Tutankhamun treasures or something. It's like, that's a lot of gold.
That was the other interesting thing, or one of the other interesting things, when we were on Elephantine Island this time. We went around the backside.
Oh, yeah.
Yusuf was showing, like, he was like, there was a whole gold sifting operation here.
Oh, yeah, you found gold.
Yeah, and he was like, look, you can just sort of push your hands through the dust and sort of shake it off, and you'll see little tiny gold specks. Because the whole island is laden with it. It's in the quartz, in the granite. Yeah. So they were mining and grinding this stuff, and then there's this entire mud brick town, and you could see layers and layers and layers of it.
Oh, yeah.
Off the backside. It had been washed away in some flood, so it was sort of cut.
That was crazy going back there. It was just this huge wall.
Yeah.
Just
that's a midden, boy.
all the pottery in there. Yeah, I was like, this is midden.
Carl got real excited. It's like, man.
Yeah.
Then it's like, let's go. I was like, no. Just got beer.
Yeah,
that was
interesting.
The other thing about that, though, the pyramid on the backside with there's that huge natural hole in the bedrock, in the granite bedrock.
Yeah.
And there's a pyramid back there. I don't know how big it was originally, but yeah, it's kind of a small pyramid. But somebody just cut all the way into the center of it, kind of like they did at Minkara. They were like cutting a hallway into the center of the pyramid, and in the middle is this giant natural, what are they called? Caulks?
Yeah, like a caulk, a pothole in the...
A giant pothole in the granite made by the eddies in the river. And it's like, wow.
Yeah.
That's where they had the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did get into the Sadat temple down there too, which I've been wanting to get into for a long time. We finally got behind the door from the guys that closed it up. This is this really cool, again, ancient granite structure that's beneath the current temple that's been rebuilt like 8 times in different eras. And
That was
yeah, it was kind of cool getting in. I've been wanting to get into that room for quite some time. Then there's another locked door over nearby that I know that there's something behind there you can't get to. That's Elephantine Island's like this mysterious place.
That was cool because you go into that door and it's now underground now, but there's the huge natural boulders, and you could see like they kind of reconstructed some of the mud brick walls where the people were building shelters, and then there's like a carving on the side of one of the hieroglyphs. I don't know. It was just that was really interesting.
Strange place down there.
Just shows you, how deeply that stuff has been buried, and this is. It's unbelievable. I was blown away by that wall of Midden too.
It's super deep. Yeah, it's Elephantine Island's like.
Let's go back to Tepe size Midden pile.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, how many meters was that, Ben?
Oh, it was a bunch. It was
They said, the Göbekli Tepe Midden is like 15 meters deep or something.
It was something like that. That's the realm of where this big giant wall of this stuff. You just. Anywhere where the ground's been cut, you just see it's pottery and detritus from civilization just piled up.
And if you look at the layers in detail, you can go down. There's like pottery, and then all this black granite.
Yep.
And then it goes down some more pottery, and then there's a bunch of Tura limestone. It's and where he's excavated the area where the boxes are, there's a black granite box there that's been just shattered and quarried. And I'm looking at the mid layer. I'm like, they got down to the top of that box and just started freaking, just cutting into it.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. That gold was cool. I didn't know that was there either until you started talking about it.
Yeah, he was pointing the area where the guy's doing current work. Like where it's fenced off, but we saw him the first time we came there. He was there, and they had workers there, and they were moving stuff, wheelbarrows and stuff. Yusuf said that's where they were doing the gold stuff.
Oh yeah, the gold processing site. Yeah.
Yeah, the processing site is over there where the archaeology is happening right now. So. Yeah.
Still looking.
Yes, they are.
Looking for who knows what. I mean, he's notorious. The guy who works on that site is sort of
the angry German.
The angry German for like finding stuff, and then he just basically builds a concrete pad over it, and then puts a door on it and locks it and doesn't let anyone in there.
Yeah.
And no one really knows what he's doing, but he's been there forever, looking for something in particular, which is
really
interesting when you tie it to, this was the Ark of the Covenant, apparently held here, right, for 400 years or something.
Yeah, I mean the first time, was it the first tour or the second tour when we were up on deck with Yusuf at night? He bought a bottle of wine, which he almost never does, and we were sitting up there chilling with him, having glasses of wine, and he was talking about that guy and that site, and he was like, I think he found something, and it was taken from him.
And that's why he behaves this
He's
way.
never recovered from that particular thing, and so now he seals everything up, and he doesn't tell anybody what's going on, and he's kind of very secretive. Like, he still is able to dig there, but the first time he found something, they took it. Yeah.
Yep.
I have to say that's one of the most impressive reconstructions of the temple. Yeah. The work they're doing there. When you go, I mean, you can see all of the archaeological reconstruction, the concrete, the mortar, and everything. And there's like a piece of a pillar that's just shattered, and it's got like a leg. And then they've got the concrete reconstruction of the rest of the pillar, and they draw the whole guy out on there. And there's like another chunk of stone over there, and it's got a little bit of writing and a piece of some shape, and then they've drawn the rest of the tool that he's holding in his hand or whatever. Then you go along and you're looking, and like they've got these areas where they've collected all these small stones like this big. Each one has like a little piece of writing or something on it, and then on the back he's got a number, alphanumeric, and they're just in this array. I was constantly telling people, don't step on that.
Don't mess with it.
I mean, it's incredible that the idea of like trying to rebuild this temple the way that they're doing it. It's like
it is good. It's one of the better examples of reconstruction, I think.
Yeah,
the artwork
really
in particular, like that's very clean. Like how they redrawn these figures, and it just seems to look right.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, and you can see the big floor tiles in the temple area, and each one is numbered, right? And they're all put in place, by the numbers and stuff. It's pretty
incredible.
amazing. Yeah.
And I just keep thinking like, he's trying to read this book.
Yeah.
He's got all the pieces of pages laying around. He's just like, what does this book say? Then the tourists come in there and start stepping on his numbered rocks.
I remember actually we were on, I think we went there last year too, and someone was leaning up against the one. I try to tell people, like, when you're in these temples, don't touch it. Like, try not. I mean, it is thousands of years old, and it's delicate, and it's color, and it's, try not to touch it. I mean, if you have to, it's certain things, fine, but try not to generally touch it or lean up against it or whatever. Someone was leaning up against it. One of his research assistants came up and said, "Oh, excuse me, you're leaning on the the ancient artwork that we're trying to restore. Please don't do that."
Exactly. I feel for the guy. I mean, I also still want to go and look at the progress, but
I mean, it's the work of a lifetime.
I understand.
Yeah, it must be brutal. I mean, it's got to be Yeah, I mean, you can understand that. I think you can understand the mentality of somebody that is invested their life in trying to reconstruct or find something, and they're there every day, and it's just people keep coming in, and you're like, just this is mine, go away.
Yeah,
I understand it, but at the same time,
Yep.
It's like, I'm gonna jump in this box real quick.
Yeah. These assholes keep coming and climbing around on your decoding process.
messing it up.
Where is stone AB 21479?
It was here yesterday.
Oh, sorry, somebody kicked it over here a little bit.
Yeah. But that also happens, right? There's that triple corner block that we found. Yeah, and we have never been able to find it since.
Gone. Yeah.
Gone.
I have 2 or 3 different artifacts that I can point to like that over time, where it's just like, we found something interesting, and you document it, and you leave it there, and then you come back a year later, and you're like, it's gone. And I've tried to find that. I've actually put I've got Mo to chase it down with the staff there and say, hey, this block, and we showed them pictures of it. Is it in the museum? Did you move it? Is it here? Is it there? And they're like, nope, no idea. And someone just carried it off. Gone forever. But yeah, it was like a beautiful piece of one of these big boxes that are on Elephantine Island, and it's the join between 3 of the bull noses. It's just that corner where you have these 3 beautiful bull noses come together on an outside corner, and it's somebody's doorstop now, I guess, or it's on the antiquities market somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe they're gonna put it in the gym.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think you'd know a little bit more about it if that was the case. But no.
You mean in the gym?
I suspect.
In the gym, yes, they're taking it. Yep. They're like, yes, this is great for a lift.
Which is also a funny story, right? The Grand Egyptian Museum. I've stopped promising people that we're going to go in there because it's still not open. And interesting fun fact, they've been building that thing for 20 years. 20 years.
Yeah.
And how long did they say it took to build the Great Pyramid again? Oh, 25 years. I see. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. This is a tiny little museum compared to the Great Pyramid. But no, you guys can't get it done in modern times in 20 years, and you expect us to believe that someone built the Great Pyramid with primitive methods in 25 years. Yep, makes perfect sense.
But going back to this idea of restoration, it is conceivable that they pyramided a previous large structure in 25 years.
Yeah, that's a lot more believable.
Especially if all the surrounding structure was already in place, the tiling, the causeway, so they could drag their blocks up.
The orientation is there. I mean, you're not having to get
and
that
they
thing
built
so
mud
perfectly
brick
lined up.
ramps, blah blah blah. They did it all the way. But there definitely is like all these. Every pyramid that you see that's in some like severe level of destruction, even the cut into Menkaure, it gets to a vertical wall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's slightly tilted.
Right.
But there's a superstructure inside.
Yeah.
And like all those satellite pyramids that are degraded, like there's this really steep structure on the inside.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
They all seem to have this.
My Doom in particular, like that's a real mystery because the casing has fallen away so completely at My Doom. I mean, those blocks on the what is the outside of that interior structure look like they were finished, like as if they were intended to be the outside structure originally.
Yeah.
And then it was a true pyramid at one point, and that was all covered up, and now all that fell away. And it's a real interesting. It's an interesting hypothesis. I mean, it makes more sense to me. Like that. I think it certainly fits in the renovation and reuse sort of themes, which I think is something that was heavily employed by the dynastic Egyptians. Given that I think they started with a lot of stuff, and you know, same. It's just a different interpretation of the timelines. I think it's the same explanation I try to give when people talk about, you know, Hatshepsut's obelisk at Karnak, this 450-ton massive obelisk. And they say, well, you know, the writing on it says that it was completed in, you know, 6 or 7 months, or whatever it was. This figure of this dating. Like, that's nonsense. Like when you work backwards, you understand what it takes to quarry and shift and move and stand up and transport all this stuff. But I could believe that the carving on it was completed inside of that time.
Yeah.
Which I think that's a valid interpretation of what those glyphs on that obelisk say. It's like, yeah, she put a name on it and wrote this beautiful carving that's all up and down that obelisk. Yeah, I think you can imagine that might have been completed in 6 or 7 months, given you've got to build the scaffolding and then plan it and get it done by stonemasons. Not like you can put 100 of them in at once. So you've got it, you're just going to have to do it in specific areas at a time.
And she claimed that it was carved with electrum.
Right.
Right? Wrought with
electrum,
yeah. So if this idea that and we saw there's a beautiful hatchet.
Yeah, it's like a knife or an axe or a hatchet or something in the
an axe.
This is in the Luxor Museum, yeah.
In the Luxor Museum, and they say that that there is electrum parts of it. And I, the second time I went to see it, I went to look at it again, and I looked at it really closely, and I had the the big light. I'm trying to determine, like, do they think the whole thing is electrum, or is it inlaid? Because there's lots of scroll work on it and everything. It's very decorated. But it's interesting because this idea of like what is electrum exactly. But she did, the carving did claim that the obelisk was wrought with electrum. And the definition of that term is like worked with, right? Worked.
Yes.
So it implies that they used electrum tools to carve it.
That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. I don't know how you're going to carve granite with silver, gold, and whatever else is in it.
Right. Well, that's the question: is what is electrum? I mean, like I know that one of the possibilities is that it was an alloy of silver and gold, but nobody really knows. Same with orichalcum. It's not really clear. I've seen also that is an alloy of gold and copper, but nobody actually knows what this stuff was.
Right. Okay.
Like Greek fire. We know about it. They talk about it, but nobody knows how to make it. Yeah. Yeah. Electrum and orichalcum. Yeah, these are mysterious materials from the ancient times.
That is interesting,
yeah. Yeah. So what do you think about there's ongoing reconstruction at Karnak as well, and Luxor?
Yeah, I can't, it's difficult to make my mind about it. I in general, I'm like, probably against a lot of it. I mean, the way that they're rebuilding those statues is...
Yes.
I mean, it's the same reason why I don't think that it was a good idea to suggest that they were going to rebuild Menkaura's pyramid, because you know it's only going to be a facsimile of what it once was. It's not what it once was. I think you can let people use their imagination to imagine what it once was without putting an idea in their head about a vastly inferior facsimile of what it actually was, and you see that's been the result for a lot of the statue work that they're doing at Karnak and Luxor. I mean, it's so visibly in our modern work. I mean, look, not to take anything away from the sculptors and the artisans that are actually rebuilding these statues, and they're making them from concrete, right? And then they paint the concrete to make it look like granite. It's kind of a funny modern version of what I think is the imitation that happened in the early periods when they would imitate these granite vases, because you'd see this perfect, amazing granite vase, hardstone vase next to a pottery vase that's painted to look like granite. And it's funny because we're doing exactly the same thing now.
Yeah.
Except they're just making these, they're gluing together parts of the original thing with concrete, and then they're painting it to look like granite and putting dots on it, and it's exactly the same thing. And it just doesn't, you can see it. It's vastly inferior to the original stonework, but at the same time, I guess it's restoring a bit of the grandeur to the structure. On the negative side again is that they are taking away access to parts of those statues that you wouldn't have access to if they weren't on the ground already. Like there's the head that I talk about all the time, the one that Chris Dunn analysed that's out the front of the Luxor statue. That's now 30 feet up in the air on the top of a reconstructed concrete body. There was one of the better head jets inside the temple, this incredibly smooth, amazing head jet. In fact, I went and looked at some old Chris Dunn, I've been talking to him, some of his older photos of that temple. I mean, all of the head jets used to be in front of they would put the pieces of the statue in front of where the statue was, and whatever remnants of it were still standing, so you could go up and look at them and sort of play with the pieces. Now all these pieces have been kind of reassembled, and they're putting them back on this statue, and it's all stuck together with concrete. So I don't know what you guys think about it, but I'm generally like, I kind of wish they'd leave it alone and just document it and let us use our imagination.
Yeah, rebuild it on a computer.
There you
That'd
go.
be great.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and also the thing I worry about is that the construction efforts are so shoddy in a lot of cases that what most likely is going to happen is more destruction of the original statue because the head's going to fall again.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah,
you know, it's like the head was whole when it was on the ground, and they just put it 30 feet back up there, and the next time it falls because of the crappy concrete work, it's going to break.
That's right. And you have to look no further than around the Giza Plateau where they've been doing work and building stuff for decades now, and all that modern stuff is just falling apart. Like it
it's
takes
falling apart.
15, 20 years and then it starts falling apart. And it's a joke Yusuf makes every time. It's like, look at this, look at this modern work, and it's literally in worse shape than the thousands of years old stuff, and it's only taken 20 years to get there.
Yeah. So the museum is a good alternative, to put things in the museum, because then they're protected from the wind and sand erosion. And whatever chemical process is happening with this granite, I don't know what it is. I'm now pretty firmly believing that it's something to do with some kind of chemical process that's going on with the granite sitting in the sand.
Deep in the sand. Yep.
Because it literally is just healing away so that's going to destroy the artifacts if they're sitting in sand, or if the sand's blowing up against them again. So, I mean...
Yeah, we found a section of obelisk in Karnak that had big glyphs all over it, and it was sitting up on this thing, and you could see that the glyphs themselves had been vastly eroded into in a similar way that we've seen on these other things.
But it's in
but
the
they
sand.
had glyphs, and
The glyphs themselves.
the glyphs themselves are like falling apart. Yeah.
So it was after they cut the glyphs that this erosion had. So and I was paying a lot more attention to that, and in a lot of cases where they have excavated an artifact, the underside that would have had contact with the ground, not wind and sand erosion, but would have been buried, is the...
Have you guys been to Memphis? I don't think you've been to Memphis, huh? We don't do that on Answers. We should get up there, because they have that big... It's like a 150, 200 ton statue of the colossal Ramses. It's laying on its back. It's in that room. You might have seen pictures of it.
Yeah, we haven't seen that one yet. I've seen pictures.
But it's the same thing. Like it's like where it was buried, it's very eroded, and then it's like there's like a part, like it's almost like a line you can trace. Either I think that's where it was buried, or maybe that was what was exposed. I'm not really sure, but one of those two. There's
pretty sure.
Definitely a different effect, either in or out of the ground. Probably the in ground, I guess.
I think it's in. I mean,
with granite in particular.
Yes.
Yeah. That made me reevaluate the list. And the statue of the head with the head jet on it in the Luxor Museum of what's his name? I can't remember the pharaoh's name. Yeah, right. The guy right in the front. One side of it is just like eroded. Yeah, and the other side is beautiful and polished. Right? And it's like that. It's the side that's eroded that was in the ground. Yeah.
That's weird.
Crazy.
It's like the reverse in places like Tiwanaku. Different material, andesite, maybe, and probably a different acidic or different soil, chemical composition. Because the stuff in places like Tiwanaku, it's like the stuff that was exposed is tremendously eroded, but it's whatever was in the ground, they stood it up, like that's been preserved.
But again, there's rainfall, all this stuff that they might be getting. Like
But this is the argument they're making with the Sphinx as well, is that under the sand, it was getting heavily degraded by water getting into the sand with the stuff. That's what they're saying. But I've seen this effect on granite. I haven't seen it so much on limestone.
Yeah, I know. That's weird, because you would think that it was the chemical composition of the limestone being dissolved and flowing with the water that's affecting the granite. Yeah. So like if you have a piece of limestone there, most likely it would just concrete onto the limestone.
Right.
Like you imagine it would build up on the limestone as opposed to where
it should accrete.
Yeah, I mean, when Chuck talked about it, like he said, it's not acidic. It's whatever the soil is. It can't really be acidic because all the limestone would be gone.
Yeah.
So it's something else that's happening. Maybe it's just moisture in the granite. And this is, this point gives me some fears for things like the labyrinth, which are, in the groundwater.
I know. Yeah.
It's going to all look like this super eroded crap stuff, and you won't be able to tell what it was or. If it was,
Oh, this is another thing. The the Valley Temple and the Osirian, the upper parts of those pillars are in better condition than the lower.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Down at the lowest levels, they're flaking away, and
Right.
you look at the Valley Temple columns. I mean, they're beautiful up top, and then as they get lower, where they were buried in sand, it's like
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
all crappy.
there's like big sections of some of those pillars in the Osirian that are just like they've the exterior part is separated.
Yeah.
We saw it also on the
Like a quarter-inch thick
Yeah.
slab of just peeling off of it. So,
the statue at the Ramesseum also has, you can see big like I don't know, like a skin. The part that's polished has been like almost separated
it's
from.
spalling off.
Yeah.
Big chunks of it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I broke one off of one of the Assyrian
Yeah,
pillars.
you
It's
destroyed,
just
you
like,
destroyed the Assyrian.
broke this ancient monument.
A little chunk comes off. Oh no!
Oh no! There's work going on at the Assyrian too. I mean, shit, we're out of time here, but there's so much to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, the Assyrian was cool. We got to some interesting spots on the Assyrian. I did a little video.
We did. Yeah. Yeah, we did. Yeah, you go to Ben's channel and check out his explorations in the Assyrian he did on site.
Well, you guys did an epic number of. You did a bunch of live streams there. We did one together. We did a chat together. But yeah, you guys did a whole bunch of live streams at.
Yeah, yes. So for those of you listening, and I know I've got some emails from some people asking like, "Where's the podcast? What happened? I know you went to Egypt. What happened?" So
we told you.
Yeah.
We would vanish to pyramids.
Right. But we published quite a bit of stuff. There's lots of live stream material on the YouTube channel. It didn't get into the podcast feed. So if you were missing stuff, you've got hours and hours and hours of Egypt content of us live streaming from there.
Yep.
So yeah, we did multiple museum streams. We did on-site streams at Karnak and Luxor and Giza and yeah.
The soul's like following me
Soul
around.
following us around in the museum, just singing Mario the entire time.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. Like, bruh.
Please stop. Yeah.
We look at him, he's like, sorry. Dun, 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 dun.
That was great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome.
Trip of a lifetime. He doesn't know it yet, but that's quite an adventure for him.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. Well, fellas,
Yep.
shall we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Ben, and
Hey.
the trips were always awesome.
Hell yeah.
And we are already planning the next one,
Yep.
folks. So we're
Stay
definitely
tuned.
going again. Yeah, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah,
I think
I'll put a.
February is the time,
Yeah, I think that is the time.
right? Yeah. It's a great. I mean, the weather was fantastic for the most part.
Yep.
Nice and cool.
Mm-hmm.
So didn't do too much sweating.
Quite cool.
All the Egyptians think it's like ice cold. They're all wearing 3
Puffy
jackets.
jackets.
Yeah.
And scarves and gloves. And
Yeah.
it's freezing.
Yeah.
It was good though. Yeah, the weather
Yeah, it
was
was great.
perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll put
All right.
I'll put a page up on my website about it. I'm going to do future tours. I'm getting tons of emails about people and people reaching out trying to get figure out when the next one is. I'm going to put at least a future intentions and ideas sort of thing. It's not committed or whatever, but at least the plans and what we're working on is going to go up there. But as I've told several people, if you really want to get on the tours, the best way you can join my Patreon or join the Snakes Patreon, because we always give Patreon members and supporters or YouTube channel members, etc., subscribe stuff for me and locals and stuff. All of those, anyone who's supporting the channel, we give them early access to register for these tours. They get to hear about it first, so that's really the best way to do
Which
it.
is good because they fill up fast. Like this one. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once it went out to the public, I mean, this first trip was like 4 or 5 days gone.
Yep.
And then, it was nice we got to put on the second tour, because that second tour was made up almost exclusively of people that were like, God damn it, I couldn't quite, I missed the timing to get on the first tour, so they were happy we threw a second one on, which we only did because we had to cancel the trip to Lebanon, for obvious reasons.
Yep.
And then, but it all worked out.
We
in
got
the
to
end.
get out there eventually.
Yeah,
We do.
will.
Yeah, we will. But
There are other places to go as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're working on that too. So
we are. We have many plans, people. So stay tuned.
Yep.
Keep watching the Uncharted X channel and Brothers of the Serpent because we are going to be traveling the world and we want to take you guys with us because it's so awesome.
it is. And it's a good time.
All right.
We do some jamming.
Yeah. Yes, and we'll always jam. Yeah. All right, Ben, thanks so much. You can, everybody knows where you are, unchartedx.com and on YouTube. Anything else?
Nope.
Definitely
guys.
support the show.
Great catching
Yeah.
up.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
We love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work. Hello all, and welcome back to Uncharted X. My name is Ben, and this is part 2 of my investigation into the beautiful site of Machu Picchu. If you haven't seen part 1 of this video, I'd recommend checking that out before watching this, as I'm going to assume that you have seen it. This video will be a little different, it's a little less formal, but I wanted to take a look at some of the different areas of Machu Picchu, and take a closer look at some of their features and their architecture. I also want to further explore some of the things that Hiram Bingham wrote in his book from 1913, and along with that I want to talk a little bit about my experience in visiting this site and to give you some recommendations for how you might structure your own visit to this iconic place. There are several distinct areas to Machu Picchu, and we'll take a look at each of these in turn, starting with the terracing system, or the system of retaining walls that surrounds the site. This is a common feature found across the Incan territory, but there are some unique aspects to this that we'll explore further. There is also the urban area, which surrounds the core of Machu Picchu.
All right, thank you for being here.
This is
Appreciate
something
it.
that I think was mostly all built by the Inca, but it does encompass a very unique and beautiful megalithic portion known as the Sun Temple, as well as running water channels throughout this whole space. Behind Machu Picchu in all of the iconic photographs looms Huayna Picchu, which is the neighbouring mountainside. This very steep mountain also has a lot of building work done on it, and there's a really entertaining tale in Hiram Bingham's book about the attempts they made to climb this peak. And then, of course, there is the megalithic core of Machu Picchu. This area extends upwards and behind the walls that we've already seen in part 1 to the highest point on the site that includes the Intuitana, or the hitching post of the sun, and we'll get into some of the details around that interesting little carving. The terracing system that was used by the Inca is very interesting.